and seasoned professional engineer with nearly 40 years of UAE experience in estimating, quantity surveying, contracts handling, supervision, consultancy, and of course, project management. She graduated from Mariano Marcos State University, Batak, Ilocos Norte. She's an Ilocana. Completed Masters of Public Administration from National College of Business and Arts, Quezon City. She handled large-scale projects ranging from 7 million to 436 million based in Abu Dhabi, UAE. To name some, the Warner Brothers theme park in Abu Dhabi, the Big Yas Village project, the villas, huge real estate development projects, and among others. Engineer Lailani or Engineer Lani is our current 2021 Committee on Public Affairs Chairwoman and PICE UAE chapter, a certified member of the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors since 2019, an active member of Philippine Institute of Certified Quantity Surveyors since 2017, an active member, of course, of Philippine Institute of Civil Engineers since 1995. A high caliber and versatile engineer, senior quantity surveyor, contract manager most of the time, a lovely mother of two. Please get ready to jot down notes as her topic, construction contract, is so interesting that anyone can relate, whatever your current post is. Please welcome our PICE UAE Pride, Engineer Lailani Corrales. Ma'am?
Allow me to sorry. Allow me to thank President Ness for that lovely introduction. Hearing those achievements as well as kind words is coming from a well-respected leader of the UAE PICE is some kind of pleasing and humbling. So thank you for that, President Ness. Allow me also to greet you all a very good day and to thank you as well on behalf of the host chapter, the PICE Qatar, for your most precious time spending with us on this first collaboration webinar of the 11 international chapters of the PICE, especially so in this Eid occasion. So most likely, or definitely, this two-day event will be a very productive one for all of us. So let me now share to you my presentation slides. Please let me know if you are seeing it in your screens clearly now.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. The topic that I am going to present perhaps is an interesting topic to some. Others may perceive it as tedious and challenging, and others may see it as very relevant. The truth of the matter is that whether we like it or not, a contract is a general part of our lives, our careers, our companies, and other businesses. So in respect of our careers as engineers, it is imperative for us and all other construction professionals to be aware of the value of construction contracts. So most likely, some engineers here in the audience are trained QS or contracts professionals or have undergone chartership with recognized bodies like the RICS or our very own, the PICQS or the Philippine Institute of Certified Quantity Surveyors, and some other qualifying bodies like the Charter Institute of Arbitrators. So this topic will not be new to you, and it will be most appreciated if we can hear from you during the Q&A portion. So let us see the agenda. I will be presenting to you the principles of contract law, and then the common types of contract, will also be briefly described. And then we will proceed with the forms of contract selection. And ultimately, some vital contractual provisions and procedures will also be tackled. So at the end of the session, you will be able to distinguish the relevant contractual terms and to know how important a construction contract is in a particular project. So the first agenda, let us define the very basic term, which is a contract. What is a contract? A contract is an agreement made between two or more parties giving rise to obligation that is legally enforceable and recognized by law. Do not be confused with the terms agreement and contract, which are used interchangeably because legally speaking, these are two different things. An agreement is simply an understanding or arrangement between two or more parties, while a contract is a specific agreement with terms and conditions that are enforceable. So lawyers sometimes proclaim that, or oftentimes proclaim, what I mean, that all contracts are agreements, but not all agreements are contracts. Why is it so? Because an agreement needs some formalities in order to make it a legal contract. So a contract is enforceable by law, while an agreement may not be enforceable. To support this statement, when we are creating a contract, there are three basic essentials, and these are the offer, the acceptance, and the consideration. So let us understand each of these fundamentals. The first is the offer, which is an expression of willingness to contract made with the intention that the offer become binding as soon as it is accepted by the party to whom it is addressed. So in this offer, it specifically details what exactly will be provided by the parties. Okay, and then the next one, there must be an acceptance, which is the final and unqualified expression of affirmation to the terms of the offer. There will be no legal effect until it is accepted, but once it is accepted, it develops into a contract, which is irrevocable. And preferably, this must be done in writing, because if an agreement is done in verbal, each party's respective memories changes over time, especially if disputes arises. The next fundamental will be the consideration. So it defines as something of value which is given for a promise. So in order to have a binding contract, there must exist also an element of consideration. So it is an essential reason to enter into a contract. So here, parties to the contract need to answer the question, why am I contracting with this party? So the absence of this element of consideration makes a bare promise, or in Latin word, it is called nudum pactum. Okay, having these three basic essentials, a contract is formed. So where the work, a scope of work, the risk, the duties, legal rights of parties are set out, and it also provides protection for the parties if in case they fail to abide by their obligations. So if it had been breached by one party, the other party will have legal remedies to consider, not as a weapon, but more on protection. Okay. So now we are ready to define a construction contract. So it says here, this is defined as a legally binding agreement made between a client and a contractor, under which the contractor agrees to supply labor and materials for construction. And in return, the client agrees to pay the contractor a specified or a certain price. Okay, so moving on, let us have a brief knowing about the 5 common types of contract or the different types of payment mechanism available in a contract. I am sure you are all aware of these mechanisms, so let us try to have a brief description of it. The first one is the lump sum contract, where a detailed measurement will not be required. If there are no variation, then that amount is what the contractor gets paid. And the contractor is responsible for errors in the BOQ. And change is measured against contract drawings, not the BOQ. So this type of contract is usually applied for building works or to any other project type when the client wants a cost certainty at the very start. So in this case, the cost risk is higher on the part of the contractor. Next is we have the remeasurable contract, where it may either have a contract sum or only a schedule of rates. Okay, so the actual quantities are measured according to the standard form of measurement indicated in the preambles. And the quantities set out in the BOQ are estimated quantities for the works or say indicative. And they are not to be taken as the actual and correct quantities to be executed by the contractor in the fulfillment of his obligations. So the unit rates in the BOQ or in the schedule of rates remain within the full duration of the project unless agreed otherwise. So this type of contract is usually applied for infrastructure works where the the cost risk is higher on the part of the employer. Now let us see the next three. There is also a target sum. So a fixed price is established like a lump sum contract for this type, okay? But the overspends and savings will be splitted between the employer and contractor using proportions as per contract. So it's like it is a shared pain and gain for overspends and savings. And then we also have this guaranteed maximum price or the GMP, where a fixed price is established also, like in a lump sum contract, but this should be the maximum, okay? So the value can go below and the savings will be shared. But if the value goes above, the contractor will be shouldering it, okay? So this is used mostly for EPC and turnkey projects. And now we have also the cost reimbursable or cost plus. This type of contract is mostly used for urgent works, like if there is a fire, for example, in a retail shop, the works need to start ASAP. And because it cannot go through the long process of tender. So this cost plus is commonly the option. So the employer has to pay for the actual cost incurred in the delivery of the project plus an agreed profit fee. So in this case, the allowance for wastage shall not be more than 5%. So there you go, the types of contract. Please do not confuse these types of contract with the next agenda topic, which will be the forms of contract. Okay. So for agenda 3, in selecting a form of contract for a particular project, the construction industry has a handful of choices. In fact, we have 3 well-known publishers of standard forms of contract. We have the Joint Contract Tribunal, or the JCT. And then we also have the Institution of Civil Engineers, the ICE. And of course, the FIDIC, which is the Federation International, the Engineers Council. While it is also common to encounter bespoke contracts in the construction industry. So let us have a brief understanding about these three standard forms. For the JCT, it has 11 main contract forms. This was founded sometime in 1931 in Great Britain by the Royal Institution of British Architects in the National Federation of Building Trades Employers. And this is described as a traditional contract used as standard building contracts in the UK or for domestic projects in England, Wales, and Scotland. So this contract focuses on liability and risks. And this is managed by, the contract is managed by the contracts administrator or architect. So for the NEC, or the new engineering contracts, this is for the procurement of works, and there are something like 6 options. It's called option A up to F. So these contracts were published in 1993 and is promoted by the Institution of Civil Engineers. So this is described as more proactive and collaborative than the JCT because it has early warning mechanism if the project has increase of work, if the project has delays, etc. So this contract is managed by a project manager or project management company. And then we have also the International Federation of Consulting Engineers, which is the FIDIC. The FIDIC suite has 8 forms. And this FIDIC was founded in 1913 by 3 countries, Switzerland, France, and Belgium. So this contract is described to be having fair allocations of risks and is proven and used in the Gulf countries since 1970s. So the contracts is being managed by the engineer. By the way, the engineer that is being referred to is not the engineer per se or us as the engineers. This is in fact engineer, the project manager, and the CA that I'm referring to here. This is in fact an entity composed of a suitable qualified engineers or other professional construction professionals who are competent to carry out the duties of acting for and in behalf of the employer. So it's composed like there is a resident engineer in that, and then the architects, the contracts managers, the QSS, planners, and other positions dependent on the requirement of the employer. So this entity is doing a lot of activities like the approval of payments, approval of drawings, determination, among other things, except of course for the amendment of the contract or termination. So I hope we are fine up to this instance. Okay. Out of these 3 standard forms, let us have a look at the FIDIC Rainbow family, in as much as this is the most commonly used standard forms of contract worldwide, especially in the GCC region.
Ma'am, pwede daw ba i-on yung camera nyo para kita ang yung facial expressions?
Okay. You want, all right, no problem.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much for that reminder. Okay, so let me continue. We are looking at the FIDIC Rainbow family. Kagaya nga ng sabi ko kanina, this is most used, especially in the GCC region. So we have the Red Book, which is the construction contract for building and engineering works designed by the employer. And then we have also the Silver Book, which is the COC for engineering, procurement, and construction projects or turnkey projects. And then the Yellow Book for the plant and design and build for MEP and engineering works designed by the contractor. And we have also the Green Book for the short form of contract. In the JCT, they are calling this one as minor works. Okay. And then for the Gold Book, this is of COC for the design, build, and operate projects for large scale, most especially, and of national interest like government projects. Okay. And then we have also the Blue Book for the dredgers contract. And the White Book, it's here. This is for the consultancy agreements. And the Pink Book. This is, by the way, this Pink Book is a form of contract used by the multilateral development banks. So these MDBs are providing help for economic and social progress in developing countries by financing projects, and these MDBs consideration were harmonized with the Red Book. So there is also one type which is called the Emerald Book. It's not shown here, but that goes for the COC of tunneling works. So in selecting So in selecting a form of contract out of the FIDIC suites, let us follow this decision support tool. When you are, especially in the consulting side, if you are determining which a form of contract you are using, you can use this decision support tool. Okay, so you will ask yourself, is the project simple and straightforward? If yes, use the short form of contract, okay, the Green Book. If no, if it is not simple, ask yourself, is it designed by the employer? If yes, use the Red Book, okay? And if not, then ask yourself again, is it a plant or is it a project with high unforeseen risks? If yes, then use either the Yellow Book for the plant and design build or the Gold Book if it has an operational requirement or maintenance requirement. But if the project is not having a high risk element, then you can always ask again, is that project, the degree of the involvement of the employer. So you have to ask this one, what is the degree of the involvement of the employer in this project? If less involvement and has no major unforeseen risks, then use the EPC or the turnkey or the Silver Book. Otherwise, discuss in detail and negotiate a modified FIDIC contract where particular conditions will establish based on the employer's requirements. So to supplement this decision tree or flow chart like diagram, I have listed also some elements that we need to be aware of when selecting a contract. So we should know the type of the project, the value of the project, how complex it is, and to know the design responsibility and risk allocations, as well as the level of cost certainty and the degree of involvement of the employer. Okay, so the selection of form of contract, by the way, must be established before the tender and procurement stage, because this COC is forming part of the invitation to tender documentations or during the pre-contract stage. Since we are already talking about FIDIC, let us identify some key differences of this standard form from the 1987 version, 1999, and the latest 2017. So in this slide, you will see some of those changes. Okay, so from the 72 clauses in 1987, it had been compacted and modified into 20 clauses in 1999. And however, you will be noticing that in from 1999 to 2017, the pages has extremely increased from 62 to 106. Because in 2017, it has more extensive contract administration procedure. So it has more detailed guidance to increase clarity and certainty so that each party can be guided accordingly in respect of their obligations. Okay, so there is more extensive administration process because now in 2017, there is a greater parity between the parties in relation to claims and confidentiality. If before, only the contractor gives notices, now the client has to do the same to the contractor. So he cannot just impose any changes without the notice provision. So here you will see also the engineer's role had been modified and strengthened. If in 1999, the engineer role is what they call now employers friendly, in 2017, the role has been expanded and designed to act neutrally, similar to that of the 1987. So the engineer cannot delegate his authority like the notice to correct, for example, and he's not required to obtain the employer's approval before acting under the authorized duties. So there are new terminologies and several terms that were modified as well, like here, the dispute and arbitration. From the engineer's decision in 1987, it had been changed to the appointment of a dispute adjudication board in 1999. Then in 2017, the DAB had been changed to DAAB, where the promotion of the dispute avoidance was eventually included. So now the DAB had become DAAB, or the acronym for the Dispute Avoidance and Adjudication Board. So the guidance notes are fuller in 2017. Apart from the extended contract administration process, there is an addition of 3-page advisory notes on the BIM systems. BIM systems were nowhere to be found in the previous versions. And also the addition of new terminologies like the new objection, notice of dissatisfaction, and others which you may have encountered already in your discharge of duties. Okay, so I want to highlight the advantages and disadvantages of using a standard form of contract versus the bespoke form. So here, in a standard form, okay, all parties are well aware of the risks. And this, because this has proven and passed the test of time. Yeah, could you imagine the JCT, the FIDIC 1913, 1931, and then when using this form, the contractor's proposal will be competitive, or his tender cost will not be overpriced because of the contractor's familiarity with the clauses and risks. Okay, and then post-contract disputes are likely to be less. And for any ambiguity, if there are precedent court cases which can serve as references in case a conflict escalates into a dispute. So the disadvantage of using these standard forms is when a client modifies a lot of terms in the appendix to tender, which is very common in the GCC region. If this is done without good professional advice, it will create more ambiguities in the contract. Okay, so for the bespoke form naman, the formulation of this one may be convenient on the part of the employer as it is aligned to its actual requirement. However, this may not be economical. Bakit? Because a law firm or somebody who has legal knowledge will needed to formulate it. Unless may mga templates na lang for a certain company. So pinapalitan na lang yung mga key requirements. And then, by the way, if the standard form provisions are altered to align the contract provisions completely in favor of the employer, this is as well categorized as bespoke form of contract. Okay, so generally, this bespoke is discouraged to be used because the drafter, it's normally the client, has the tendency to allocate all the risk to the contractor. But there are contra protection also on the part of the contractor. So like when a contracting parties, for example, has disputes and they bring the matter to the court, the court will least favor the one who has made the contract. So this is what we call the contra preferentum rule. Okay, so in summary, both the standard form and the bespoke form are used and accepted in the construction industry. So irrespective of its form, the bottom line is that a contract should be made in good faith, not fraudulent, and the object of the contract is legal and not against public policy or in violation of local laws. So if the contractual obligation is something that you are required to do because you have agreed to do it by way of a legally binding contract, whether in writing or in verbal, the legal obligations will not at all be left out, as these are mandatory things that you do no matter how wrong it is, because it is mandated by the state, right? So both contractual obligations and legal obligations needs to be adhered to by the contracting parties. So before closing this agenda 3, I want to highlight the distinction between a letter of intent and a letter of acceptance, in as much as these mechanisms are as well used in the construction industry. So why and when are these being used? So a letter of intent is a document outlining the general plans of an agreement between two or more parties before a legal agreement is finalized. So this does not create a contractual relationship yet. It cannot be legally enforced because it is unilaterally signed. I think it stopped.
It may glitch, ma'am. Maybe our network here.
Okay.
Same with me. Okay.
But you are still seeing slides?
Pa-share po
No,
ulit.
ma'am.
Okay. So I'll reshare it. All right.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yung request nila, ma'am, yung background mo pa-change dun sa webinar theme.
I'm sorry, but how will I do that?
Background, ma'am, mamaya.
Virtual background?
Yes. Tapos select mo yung photo, yung shinare ko.
Photo. Where is that?
Save mo muna sa desktop siguro. Yung sinend ko kanina, ma'am.
I think I'm not so techy on this one.
It's
Press.
okay, ma'am. Yes, proceed with your slides. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll close this and I'll share my screen. Okay, for a while, where am I? So I am in. Are we back on slide 19? Are you seeing it now?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I'll continue. Like what I've said, if an LOI will not progress into a contract agreement for some reasons like the non-compliance of certain terms therein. Example is if the contractor did not submit the performance certificate within that period of time, then whatever works executed by the contractor can be compensated based on quantum merit reimbursement. This is a Latin word stating that whatever has been done has to be paid. So as much as possible, avoid using an LOI because apart from being a conditional in nature, it is not binding and a dangerous vehicle to rely on. On the other hand, a letter of acceptance or a LOA is a letter of formal acceptance signed by the engineer of the letter of tender, making it bilateral. The expression LOA can mean the contract agreement itself, or also known as an award letter, which is sent by the client as a written confirmation that the tenderer has been successful and will be awarded of a contract. So an adequately written LOA may suffice in some instances because parties are defined also there, including the scope of works, the amount, the terms of payment, program, warranties, dispute resolution up to termination, but it should not be the standard approach because the formation of a properly formulated contract agreement will still be the soundest. Okay, here, if you will be seeing this one, in FIDIC 2017, clause, this one, it's saying that upon the issuance of LOA to the contractor, a 35 days has to be considered for the finalization or completion of the agreement. Okay, now let us proceed with the agenda 4. Okay, where we will be having some of the vital provisions within a contract. So first is the collateral warranties or third-party rights. It is defined as a concurrent contract which is related to or dependent upon another contract. So warranty is to capture a promise from one party to another, and this is executed because of the privity to contract. The rule of privity is a legal doctrine whereby one party to a contract can enforce its terms. So in this illustration, only A and B are the parties to a contract, okay? Suppose A is the contractor and B is the developer or the employer, the client, and C is the end user or the purchaser of the property. So in order for C to impose its rights, for example, if he has a water leakage in his purchased unit, then C can just call A or the contractor to rectify the leakage, and C can only do this one when a collateral warranty is made between A and B. So it's like in this scenario, the employer or B has assigned its rights to C. So I hope this is clear. Okay, and now we proceed in the next slide. Again, in this visual, you will see several parties giving a collateral warranty to the end users, like the employer. Go through with the red dotted lines, arrows. Employers are giving collateral warranties to end users. Also from the designers, from the contractor, from the subcontractor, and okay, yeah. So dependent on the nature of the original contracts. So now, in ideal situation, the collateral warranty agreements are issued anytime after the signing of the original contract between the contractor and the subcontractor in favor of the employer. However, in most of the project experience, in the project that I have dealt with in the main contracting, the CWAs are commonly issued at the last stages of the project, or it had been made as one of the conditions for closing out. So if at the start we are busy issuing and finalizing subcontract agreements, at the last stages naman, we are as well busy issuing and collecting collateral warranties from the subcontractors in favor of the employer or to the end user. So when making a CWA, it is the same context as making a contract actually. So it's just a CWA is dependent upon another contract. So that means the obligations provided by the warrantor or the contractor, for example, must be within the terms of the principal contract, assign only to a definitive number of assignees, and be mindful of the limit of the liability period. So I hope we are clear on this collateral warranty clause. Now we proceed with the bonds and guarantee. Okay. Bonds and guarantee are actually ways in which a developer, owner, or employer are provided security against the default of a contractor. Or in cases if the contractor fails to meet its contractual obligation, or if he is becoming insolvent or he fails to remedy a default, and other circumstances that entitles an employer to termination. So here, a bond is, just to mention some distinction between these two, a bond is on demand or unconditional. This is irrevocable, but do not require any proof of default for the employer to make demand for payment. While that of the guarantee, this is a general term used with less stringent commitments. This is also irrevocable, same as the bond, but a contractor's default has to be proven before the guarantee can be liquidated. So on the part of the client, they want a bond. On the part of the contractor, as much as possible, kung pwede yung guarantee, sa guarantee. So understanding further these things, a bond is like a loan where the contractor, here, for example, applies to the surety, commonly the bank, and to have a bond issued in its name for a sum of money. So the bond is issued to the employer who may or may not request the money from the bank or from the surety. If this bond is called correctly, the full value of this one becomes the liability of the contractor, and he needs to repay it to the bank. So that is how a bond actually works. So the bonds that are commonly found within a project documentation are the following. First is the performance bond. As said earlier, this is a security for the employer in case of the contractor's non-performance of his contractual obligations. We have also this advance payment bond. This is a guarantee for the employer that they will be able to claim back all or part of the advance they have paid to the contractor in accordance to the commercial terms of the contract. So the value of this bond advance payment is dependent on the amount issued, and this will expire once the advance payment is repaid. And then we have also a retention bond. This is an alternative to the normal withholding of an amount from the contractor's periodic progress payments. So this may reduce when the taking over certificate of the project is issued, and the remaining or value becomes valid until the issuance of, until the expiry of the defects notification period or the issuance of the performance certificate. And then last but not the least, we have the tender bond. The purpose of this tender bond is to demonstrate the commitment of the tenderer to proceed if he is successful in his bid. So the employer can call this bond in the event that the contractor withdraws or do not want to proceed with the contract, and this amount will cover for the delay or for any retendering activities to be done again by the employer. The calling of the bond is considered unfair under the common law. Yeah. So if a bond is liquidated, it will significantly affect the contractor's cash flow, his reputation, and even his future business opportunities will also be affected. That is why in the contract, there are protection and remedies for the contractors. And this could be the ensuring that the bond has a fixed expiry date rather than conditional to the expiry of the defects notification period or the issuance of the performance certificate, which can normally be extended far longer than planned. So some bonds, performance bonds contain notice provisions, which gives the contractors a time or an opportunity to remedy any default. Yeah. And then next is the provision of compensation clauses. Like in FIDIC 1999 clause 4.2, it says that the employers are obliged to compensate all damages, losses, expenses, including legal fees to the contractor where a wrongful demand of a PB has been made. So this clause is a good protection to the contractor. The employer cannot just call the performance bond without any valid basis. So also, the contractor can obtain injunction from courts. For a guarantee naman, a bank guarantee is not a debt or a loan in itself like the bond. It is a guarantee by an institution that it will assume the costs if a borrower, normally the contractor, defaults on his liabilities and obligations. So bank guarantee signifies that if the contractor fails to perform his obligation, the bank will cover for it. In some instances, a parent company guarantee also takes place, where the contractor is a subsidiary to a parent company, or if he has a mother unit. So the mother unit shall assume the obligation of his subsidiary units in case of failure of performance. Now let us move on to the insurances. Okay. So here it says an insurance, it is defined as an equitable transfer of a risk of a loss from one entity to another in exchange for a payment in the form of a risk premium. So it provides financial compensation for covered losses, as many mistakes, errors, and unforeseen events can lead to damages and losses during pre and post-construction stages. So the risks are defined either under the contract or under the law. So the risk under the contract, it could be those natural calamities like flood, typhoons, major fire, or anything that destroys the work or impedes the delivery of the project, or defined under the law. An example of this is decennial liability, which we will be tackling a bit later about this one. Now, in this visual, you will be seeing how an insurance works. Okay, so when a contractor buys an insurance and pay for premiums, the insurers, or the brokers, will invest those premiums to bonds and stocks. And over time, that premium is gaining profit and awaiting to be claimed if an event of risks happens within the project. So normally the percent premium being paid is dependent on the contract value or the contract requirements, as well as the credibility of the contractor or the buyer of insurance. So what are the insurances that you would expect to see in a construction project? Here, for the JCT and FIDIC forms, there are 3 common insurances. Although you may notice slightly differing in some terminologies. These are the insurances for the works and the contractor's equipment. Under the JCT, it is called the contractor's all risks, while that in FIDIC versions works and the goods. And then we also have the third-party liability insurance. Again, notice the differing terminologies. This will cover for the fees and expenses for the damage to adjacent properties and injury to a person while the works is being executed. Yeah, and then we have the workman's compensation. This insurance covers the compensation in case an employee suffered illness or met an accident causing injury or even death during the performance of his works. It is also common to see the professional indemnity insurances especially for design obligations, also like negligent act, errors, breach of duty, and even breach of confidentiality. So, and other insurances as required by law and local practice. And by the way, this is already defined in the FIDIC 2017 versions. So for every insurance type, the coverage, the period, the exclusions, minimum amount per occurrence, and other conditions are all defined in the contract. So for any doubts, especially during tendering, you can always share the contractual requirements of the project with your insurance brokers or agents who are expert on this matter for quotations. Okay, now we proceed with the payment provisions. Okay, this is one important provision in a contract. And actually, in a construction contracts, it has payment clauses that like the one listed from the standard form FIDIC of 1999 and 2017. In 1987, it is under clause 60, something like that. But for 99 and 2017, they are all falling under clause 14. So this covers the agreed contract price, release of advance payment, interim payments, what to include in interim payments, up to the releases and closing of final account. So what I'm trying to share here is about the key elements of good practice in managing payment, which are which we need to know. The components, the methods and procedures and roles of its parties must be defined, established. So these are the mechanisms of knowing what to submit, how many sets, how often, and then the sequence of event of payment and timeline of submission up to payment release, including applicable charges for any late payments. So all of these 15 clauses, is, if you are seeing it, it's a bit exhaustive. In respect of FIDIC form, including amendments, has to be reviewed and adhered to by the parties at the course of the project execution. Okay. So my next question is how important a payment is. So that is the next slide. Okay. So payment provides benefits to everyone, right? So it keeps a smooth functioning of the economy, not only to the contractor, but anyone down the payment chain. So the first one is the advance payment, which is an interest-free loan for mobilization purposes. This payment is released when the contractor submits the advance payment guarantee and performance guarantee. Sometimes as a precondition to the release of the advance payment, the insurances or proof of insurance buying and payment expenditure plans for subcontract practices are also adding up to the requirements. So depende sa contract kung ano pa yung idinagdag for the prerequisite of releasing of an advance payment. And then for the interim payments, this has to be paid by the client on a periodic basis, normally on a monthly basis. And for the purpose of relieving the contractor of the burden of financing the whole of the works until completion, especially for projects which may take months or even years to complete. So it basically helps the contractor in his cash flow. Okay. Now, what are the components for the interim payment application? From subclause 14.3 of the FIDIC, of course, there will be the works executed based on site validation against desktop measurements into the BOQ rates. So then to consider also any changes like the changes in legislation or changes in costs and any other additions or deductions like variations, claims, any day works valuation, the activation of the provisional sums, prime cost sums, and even the payment of materials on site. And then also to be considered delivery of the advance payment, and then the withholding of the retention amount, and how much previous payments had been released or certified, and of course, the addition of value-added tax. Now we proceed with how important evaluation process is. Okay. This is a formal contractual process actually, being done whether in advance payment, interim, statement at completion, final account, which normally follows a method and criteria for valuing an activity. So the works applied by the contractor shall be validated and issued with payment certificate by the engineer in respect of the FIDIC standard form, or the contracts administrator in respect of the JCT, or the project manager in respect of the NEC. So the meaning of value is sometimes or oftentimes the subject of dispute. Tama? I hope you agree on me in this. And from the contractor's point of view kasi, he may say that the value is found in the BOQ where we are entitled for what has been done at bill rates plus a proportion of the prelims, which is correct. Tama? But from the client's point of view naman, he may say that the value is the whole of the contract less the cost of completing the work, which is as well logical. So there will be some implications of over and undervaluing the works. So what does this mean? An interim valuation must be done realistically, supposedly. Tama? So a low valuation creates unreasonable problems for the contractor, whereas a high valuation creates risks to the employer for paying sums for which he has no benefit. So for such differing point of views, down the line, for each and every valuation period, there is a reconciliation process between the contractor and the employer's team to cover this gap. I hope we are clear up to this matter. I still have a few slides for the payment. Here, actually, this is the last slide for the payment provision. I want to show you this visual regarding the typical sequence of payment events envisaged in clause 14 of FIDIC 2017 condition of contract. So the engineer shall, within 28 days here, after receiving the statement and supporting documents from the contractor, issue an interim payment certificate to the employer. So, of course, with a copy to the contractor. So, this IPC will state the amount which the engineer fairly considers to be due, and including any additions or deductions which have become due under the contract. So upon receipt of the IPC from the engineer, the employer is bound to release the money within the next 28 days, making it a total processing time of 56 days from the contractor's submission of the statement. So if the contractor does not receive the payment in accordance to 14.7, the contractor is entitled to receiving financial charges calculated at an annual rate of something like 3% as per the FIDIC 2017 COC. For the final payment naman, it may take a longer time for the contractor to get his payment based on this figure in the bottom of this slide. Okay, let us proceed to another interesting contract provision, which is the variation or the change order. Let me just have a water. Okay, we are in variation or the change procedure. So in JCT and FIDIC, the description of change is called variation, okay? While that of the NEC, it is termed as compensation event. So interchangeably, we are using all of these terms actually in our work. So when does a change arises? Actually, there are many events that could result to change or alteration to the original contract. And this includes the one in your screens now. It could be changes to the design, changes to specifications, method statements, scope of works, and to statutory requirements if there are new legislations or repeal of existing regulations. Also changes to specified sequence or timing or to the program. It also includes the events of force majeure or the use of technical innovations or new technologies, and if there are unresolved qualifications prior to contract signing, and value engineering activities as well, among other things. So dependent on the nature of the change, a variation can be initiated by the employer. In what instances? If he changed the scope of works, for example, or the employer's requirement, and it could also be initiated by the engineer if there is a need for redesigning or he finds errors in the current design. And it can also be initiated by the contractor as per site condition or due to authority requirements. So before any valuation or determination will take place, there are steps to be taken, and these are the following here. There must be an investigation on the validity of the variation or validity of the change, which particular contract provision will apply or establish the basis of contractual requirement. And then there is a need to compile and ensure that all necessary substantiation of the variation are in place. And this could be the engineer's instruction, and then the site instruction, in some cases, confirmation of verbal information, response to RFIs, and then approvals to material inspection requests and work inspection requests. So once these relevant records are in place, the evaluation process follows. So variation and changes are valued in different ways, dependent on the availability of necessary documents or depending on the condition of the change. So as to cost, the valuation could be done using the contract rates or the schedule of rates or the BOQ rates. And for new items which cannot be found in the contract, it could be based on the market rates or quotations collected from the market, okay? And it could also be done through day works valuation, especially for works with minimal scope or incidental works in nature. And of course, when valuing the cost, there should be the OHP being considered as well, and the addition of building works in connection, sundries, and of course, preliminaries if applicable. As to time implication naman, the program has to be checked if such change affected the critical path. So the one important factor that need to be not be forgotten is the time bar clause. So if the contractor fails to issue the requisite notice within the specified time within the contract, sabi he will not be entitled for time adjustments and cost addition or adjustments as well. So the main purpose of time bar actually is to avoid nasty surprises during final account. Okay, so after ensuring that the change management process has been followed, and based on fair and reasonable determination by the engineer, all variation, cost, and time impact must be agreed and signed by both parties. So the cost implication, whether positive or negative, are added to the contract sum in order to arrive on the anticipated final account of the project. So variation is also complicated and is most of the time the source of conflicts. And if such conflicts will not be resolved appropriately, it will escalate to dispute. Tama? Okay, another item that is related to claims is the extension of time. So here, an extension of time is defined as the extended period granted to the contractor under valid events, allowing him to achieve completion of the works as per agreed revised date. So as per FIDIC Red Book of 1999, subclause 8.4, the EOT events can be due to variations, cause of delay as per the contract conditions, and then adverse climatic conditions. It could also be due to shortage of labors and goods, and of course, employer's default. So by general principles, an employer's delay is categorized as excusable and compensable, and while that of a neutral delay of employer and contractor, it is categorized as excusable but not compensable. We also call this neutral delay as concurrent delay, where both parties shall bear their own loss. An EOT or an extension of time will be awarded at the expense of the employer, but no cost for the contractor. So the contractor will bear his own loss as well. In the Society of Construction Law Delay and Construction Protocol, it favors the grant of EOT but no cost in case of concurrent delay, unless the contractor can separate out the cost related to his delays and the delays caused by the client. So here, the onus lies within the contractor, and it is somewhat difficult to proceed with this. And then we have also the culpable delay of the contractor, which is a non-excusable and non-compensable. So at this juncture, the liquidated damages can be activated. By the way, just an added information, a liquidated damages is the ascertained and agreed sum in the contract, which reflects the actual losses to be suffered by the employer in case the project will be delivered late. Okay, so in the absence of an EOT mechanism in the contract, it is called time at large. Okay, where the contractor's obligation is to finish the remaining works within a reasonable period of time. This will not be good or beneficial to the employer because the liquidated damages for that period will not apply. And on the part of the contractor naman, extra cost will also be expended within that uncontrolled time. Okay. Now, okay, let us see this data slide. So like what I said, the contractor shall be entitled for an extension of time if and to the extent that the completion of the works or sections will be delayed by several causes, as generally shown earlier, or based on a more detailed list as shown in this table. So for the unforeseeable physical condition, discovery of fossils, and even the suspension consequences and changes in legislation, employers' risk and force majeure, all of this warrants for an extension of time with associated cost, but not for the profit. Okay. It could also be due to variations or other substantial changes to the work, where EOT or extension of time and cost and even profit shall apply. Okay. Also to implied variation, sometimes dependent on the nature of that variation, EOT cost and profit will not at all be applicable. And then for exceptionally adverse climatic conditions or unforeseeable shortages of availability of goods and personnel even, caused by the epidemic or governmental actions, and even the delays caused by authorities, it warrants also for the extension of time, but not for the cost and profit. So I just want to add that in the award of an extension of time, there are delay analysis techniques that are being used by the planners, like the impacted as planned versus as built, collapse as built, time impact analysis, window analysis. Yes, so these are all falling under the jurisdiction of our planners. So I repeat that an award of an EOT may not always come with cost. When an EOT is determined, and if that event falls within the compensable category, the contractor can as well be entitled to a prolongation cost, which normally covers admissible items like the site overheads or the preliminaries. The components of the preliminaries could be the staff and admin salaries. It could be for accommodation, plant and equipment, fencing, security, power, water, insurance, others that are running, okay? And then admissible items could also be the head office overhead, like the office rental, maintenance, even the traveling cost of the managers. And if it cannot be shown based on actual receipts, the last result could be the application of formula of the Hudson HLA and then Hankan sa Maratunga. So financial charges is also included as admissible for the prolongation cost. There are also other types of claims like the acceleration and disruption cost. Although these two may not be directly related to extension of time, but these are commonly encountered within the construction industry as one of the effective strategy to compensate lost time. So, okay. For the acceleration claim, an instruction must be in place para makakolekt ng cost. So this cost claim covers for additional resources to fast track the work, like the increase of manpower and equipment, and also the arrangement of extended working hours or overtime, and then even double shifts, and even the changes of working methodologies. For the disruption cost naman, here the delay may not affect the overall project completion. Say, for example, if you have suffered a disruption in month 5 due to government's COVID-19 restrictions, hence you had reduced your productivity and you had idle resources, but you were able to constructively accelerate the work in month 7. That is a scenario falling on this. So cost-wise, is similar to acceleration where the added resources will get compensated. Okay. And finally, we are in the dispute resolution and arbitration clause provisions. Actually, there is no better way to address issues and resolve conflicts before they escalate to dispute by way of using dispute resolution techniques, which are introduced as part of the civil code rules. And this could be the one listed here in this slide, the negotiation. This is the most common form of dispute resolution where the parties themselves attempt to resolve the dispute. And then we have also the mediation, where a private and structured form of negotiation assisted by a third party that is initially non-binding. However, if the settlement is reached in this level, it can become legally binding as well. The result will be legally binding dependent on the agreement of both parties. So we have also the conciliation. It is the same as mediation, only that the third party conciliator can propose a solution, contrary to that of the third party mediator. Mediator is there only to listen and to facilitate the negotiation. And then we have also the expert determination, which is a private process involving an independent expert with interrogational powers in order for him to give a binding decision afterwards. And then we have also the adjudication, which is an expert an expert is instructed to rule on a technical issue. Actually, this one is mostly used in the UK, this adjudication. And then we have the arbitration, which is a formal, private, and binding process where the dispute is resolved by the decision of a nominated third party, normally the arbitrators. So the object of this arbitration is to obtain resolution using private legal experts. Sometimes nga tinatawag nila yung arbitration as a copy or imitation of the litigation because of the introduction of legal experts. So parang lumalabas ngayon, the only difference is arbitration is done privately while that of litigation is done publicly. So using these alternative dispute resolution techniques will have a speedy result, and the process is done privately, like what I said. So in effect, it has a confidentiality protection for both parties. If and when these ADRs fail, then the last resort is litigation, or what we call the court proceedings. This is a formal process now na yung dispute, it has been taken to the civil courts and it has to be decided by a judge. So the judgment of that court will become binding on the parties, subject to rights of appeal, of course. So this litigation is costly. The process is done in public, and then it is taking time to wait for the result and will become very adversarial and can even damage the reputations and good business relations of the parties involved. Okay. All right, now let's proceed with the next slide. Okay. In a construction contract, this dispute and arbitration clause is very vital because we all know that the construction industry is subject to more risk and potential disputes than many other industries because of the physical nature of the product itself. The projects can be very large in size. It requires high capital requirements and wide geographical requirements also. and the parties involved are too many. Okay, so the causation of disputes is also wide range. It can be from the employer. Dahil sa pag-change niya ng requirement or dahil maraming contract ambiguities or even late issuance of payment to the contractor. So causes of dispute yan. And then from the engineer, from the engineer and consultant side, due to design issues and inadequacies, it could be due to the late of issuance of drawings or information and even determination, and lack of competence and experience. And from the contractor side naman, dispute could be due to poor planning, poor programming and coordination, and poor standard of works, and even issues of safety. And of course, if he is delaying payment to his subcontractors or suppliers. Okay, for the next slide, let us have a look at FIDIC standard form on how it is forming a team to address dispute resolution. So in FIDIC 1999 subclause 20, the parties, it says here, shall jointly appoint a dispute adjudication board by the date stated in the appendix tender, and it shall comprise either 1 or 3 suitably qualified persons. So normally in this case, the employer nominate the first and the contractor nominate the second, and the third will be appointed by the appointing entity indicated in the appendix to tender. So the payment of this DUB is something like 50-50 sharing.
That's 5 minutes.
Okay, sure. And then the DAAB, it's the same as the DAB as well, only that is time prescriptive because it needs to be appointed within 28 days upon the issuance of the letter of acceptance. So both versions are allowing independent and impartial dispute avoidance members to resolve the issues. Okay, as a final statement of this subject matter, there is no better way to avoid potential disputes than to have good communication, good administering also of the contract. So the last contractual provision is the termination. So termination can be done mutually or through court order. So in the FIDIC 1999 Red Book, if you will see the clauses 15 and 1619, it includes the basis of termination. It could be done by the employer due to the contractor's default or due for convenience purpose. So the only difference of this default and the convenience is that the employer can terminate the contract and he can award the project to some other parties to complete the project, while that for the convenience, he will terminate the project not for the purpose of awarding it to other entity. Okay, so for the termination of contractor naman, if the contractor is suffering delayed releases of payment, then that is one ground of applying a notice for termination to the employer. So clause 19 naman, force majeure, if the situation is prolonging, then either party can submit a notice for termination. Okay, so there you go. There will not be a good way or time to terminate, good time or good way. This question is very complex. So the bottom line is to check the merit of the case and apply all legal process, identify the breaches, seek legal advice, determine the impact and recovery plans before proceeding with the termination. So that concludes my presentation, and hopefully you have gained something from this. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Engineer Leilani Corrales. Palakpakan po natin for that very detailed presentation. Medyo kabisado nyo po yung mga contracts, no? Tanong ko lang po, pwede po bang lagyan ng expiration yung marriage contract?
Oh, I didn't expect that to be asked here, sir. But really, expiration, that is a good point. But,
Okay. Yeah, kidding aside, moving on, we will have, as usual, our Q&A portion. And this will be moderated by, of course, none other than by our Lady President, the first best president internationally. Yan, siya po ang nauna, Engineer Sheila Medel, to be assisted by Engineer Edgar Dominsil. Ma'am Sheila, pasok.
Thank you, PPAP. Good afternoon, everyone. Now, thank you very much, Ma'am Lani, for that information being shared to us. We have here 17 open questions in our Q&A box. Okay, the first question is from Engineer Anderson Batnag from PICE Western Region. In most cases, ready ka na ba dyan, ma'am?
yes po.
Okay. In most cases, seminars or webinars talked about FIDIC. Okay, so is this the best reference for general contract? Does, in our country, the Philippines, follow FIDIC? Okay, in general, in government contracts related to construction project.
Okay. Yes, like what I said, there are various publishers of standard forms of contract, like the JCT, normally used in the UK. The NEC, it's widely used already around the world, and the FIDIC. FIDIC, for the thing that it has been there long time ago. So it has been used since 1970 as far as the GCC region is concerned. And even Canada's, because I have also friends working in Canada, Malaysia, and FIDIC is widely applied there. So as far as the Philippines is concerned naman, I cannot say much because my experience actually is more on the Middle East. But if it is not for FIDIC, then bespoke could be prevalent in the Philippines. Maybe from the audience, they can add something to this in respect of the standard forms being used in the Philippines. Anyone could add on that, please?
Okay, all right, ma'am. Kung meron kayong input, you can type in our chat box. Feel free to add inputs. All right, thank you, ma'am. Next question is from PICE EPSA, Engineer Jerry Ortega. Can a contractor claim an extension of time or loss and expenses as a result of COVID-19 emergency? It is a part of a standard form.
Okay. Thank you for that. I expect at least one question related to COVID, but it depends. So if, example, I just want to use the UAE terms. There had been no stoppage of works due to COVID-19, although there are government instructions and regulations stating the safety precautionary measures like for example, the distancing, social distancing. If before we are using a bus full of 40 laborers, during the COVID, that bus has a capacity of 20 only. So definitely there will be some add-ons on the cost, right? But then, as far as we are concerned here, based on experience, we have made our claims actually for our live projects. So we have considered some idle resources, loss of productivity. We have compiled all those substantiation and submitted to the engineer. So the engineer is taking a look at this one. So for sure, we are expecting on the side of the contractor, we are expecting at least an extension of time. But as to the cost, it's 50-50. We might be getting the extension of time, but not for the cost. So until we receive our the determination of the engineer, then I can say that both cost and time is what they call now is an entitlement. But we all know that EOT is okay, but cost is still questionable.
All right, very clear, ma'am. Okay, we only have like 10 minutes to answer the question, so you might as well consider, ma'am, to answer, briefly para to
Okay,
accommodate.
sure. Okay, you can cut me actually if you
Alright.
have.
So next question is from Engineer Henner Rosario from PICE Pangasinan and Riyadh chapter. Dual chapter itong si sir. Okay, if there is a dispute on the owner, designer, and contractor, especially on budget and material allocation matters, who is the one to decide for the third party involvement to be chosen?
Dispute on the budget, you mean?
This is a dispute, dispute between the owner, designer, and contractor, especially on budget and material allocation matters. Who will
Budget.
be the one to decide?
Okay, all right. So any kind of dispute or conflict, it has to be raised by anyone, by either the employer, the engineer, or the contractor. So it must be laid out on the table, and normally it's the engineer's coverage to determine what will be the best resolution for any case, especially on it is not only limited to cost but also to time.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So it is the engineer who decides.
Yes.
All right, next question is from PICE Bahrain, Engineer Jan Afable. With regards to PII, how to calculate the amount provision of the PI insurance?
Okay, like what I said, it depends on the contractual condition. So if it, normally for a contracting, it covers only for the design obligations. Okay, so this amount is dependent also on the credibility of the designer, the firm. But in certain cases, if it is a QS firm, for example, it is a mandatory to get a professional indemnity insurance for not only for design obligation but also for the services rendered. So it depends on the calculation of that is dependent on the turnout of that firm from previous years. So the amount that he has to pay is dependent on his turnout from previous years.
Okay.
I hope I'm addressing it clearly.
Yes, ma'am, it is clear so far.
Okay.
All right. Next question here is from PICE Qatar, from Engineer Noel Jumawan. VP Noel. So there is a scenario where part of the work has been de-scoped by the client or employer. The quantities in the BOQ are inconsistent with the quantities in the drawing. The question here is, the quantity will be considered, which quantity will be considered in the omission? The quantity in the BOQ or the quantity in the drawings? Say, for example, the quantity in the BOQ is more than the quantity in the drawing.
Okay, first we have to look at the priority of documents. If the BOQ or if the drawing comes ahead of the BOQ, then we must respect the drawing. Yeah, but basically in general, always the drawing should be the reference.
All right, so clear. The drawing will be the reference. Thank you, ma'am. All right, next question is from, let's get back to PICE UAE from Engineer Manuel Papasin. What is the process of submitting EOT? Should the revised baseline program be included, or should the EOT be approved first before submitting the revised baseline program?
Okay. All right. For the submission of any claim, including the EOT, of course, there should be a notice first, and then the detailed particulars shall follow within a specific period of time. So for the extension of time, yes, it should be supported with the program. I mean, current program against the adjusted program.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Okay, we have a question from PICE Agusan del Norte. Oops, I lost it. Okay, sorry, we'll get back to that later. So here is a question from PICE Pangasinan. Okay, we have already. Okay, let's get back to a question from, okay, PICE Qatar. Okay, Engineer Frederick Fuentespina. He is asking your insight about this. It is true or false? A contract may exist between a contractor and the owner regardless of whether there is a written document outlining terms of agreement.
Yes. Actually, an agreement or a contract can be done verbally or in written. As much as possible, like what I've presented earlier, it should be done in writing. Because writing nga, ang dami ng issues about dispute. So both parties will be covered if it is done in writing compared to verbal only. Verbal agreement, it could be applied only to very minor works dependent on the trust of both parties. But for complex projects, always go for the written contract.
All right, clear, ma'am. Written contract. Now, here is a question from Engineer Shelly Maya from Agusan del Sur. Okay. Kailan po pwede i-release ang retention money ng contractor? Pwede po ba i-release na hindi 100% completed ang contract?
Okay, that is a good question. Yes, retention money can be released. The first 50%, I'm talking about the standard forms. Huh? Okay, so the first 50% can be released upon the issuance of the taking over certificate. So that means when a TOC is in place, substantially completed na yung project except some snags. So those snags needs to be completed within the defects notification period, and at the expiry of the defects notification period, the other half can be released or upon the receipt of the final acceptance certificate of the project.
Okay, clear. Another question from PICE EPSA chapter from Dr. Narciso Mapalo. Can you provide, okay, no, sorry. He's asking for a copy of FIDEC. Okay. Now, another question from PICE Qatar, from Engineer Melissa Ortiguera. In the failure of the design of the contractor, but partly failure from the side of the owner's consultant, causing delays and overheads, what can the contractor claim, and to where can the contractor claim it?
Design issue? Okay. So it is dependent again on the type of contract. Is the project designed by the employer? So if there will be some cases of design failure, then it will be shared actually, because it's not only the designer that has to be accountable. It is also, there is also a portion that a contractor will be held liable because apart from constructing that project, he needs to verify also if that design is workable, right? So it depends on the contract condition, but there will be shared liabilities on the part of the designer and the contractor.
All right, thank you. This will be the last question, ma'am. For those who throw in their questions in the Q&A box, don't worry. Ma'am Lani will answer your questions after this webinar and it will be sent to your email. So the last question will be from PICE EPSA, Engineer Rohel Limhoko. Is there any maximum percentage of variation cost compared to the construction cost?
Again, it depends on the contract condition, but as to the standard form, if I'm not mistaken, there is some kind of 20%. This is subject for verification. If the variation reaches something like if 20%, then the contractor is entitled to review the rates. But itself, if this provision is excluded, then negative.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you also. And Ms. Yela, if I may not be able to answer those questions in the chat box, maybe I welcome those questions to be sent to my email and I'll send it back to you with the answers.
Yes, ma'am. We will send all the unanswered questions to your email.
Okay, thank you, Sheila.
Thank you very much. Back to you, Sir Arnel.
All right, thank you very much, Press Sheila and Engineer Edgar. Kung hindi niyo po na itatanong, kagaya ni Ma'am Micaela, si Press Sheila po ay still available. So kung meron kayo mga personal na tanong, ay send nyo lang na directly sa atin para mabigyan ko kayo ng tamang advice. Okay, Ma'am Lani, please stand by for your certificate.
Okay.
Tanong ko lang po, kano niyo si Jackie Lu Blanco at saka si Pilita?
Okay. Actually, kamag-anak yata ng asawa ko eh. Pero
all right. Awarding of certificate, technical team. All right, Philippine Institute of Civil Engineers Qatar Chapter, International Charter I-03 in collaboration with international chapters. Certificate of Appreciation is hereby awarded to Engineer Leilani C. Corrales in grateful acknowledgement of the invaluable services as the source speaker during the conduct of the first collaboration webinar with the PICE International Chapter held on May 13 and 14 with the theme Unity Amidst the Pandemic through Technical Collaboration and International Partnership. Signed, Engineer Oscar De Serra, Co-Chairman, Engineer Dave Sanchez, Chapter Secretary, Engineer Armand Tolentino, First VP, and Engineer Roel Banal, Second Vice President, and of course, our President, Engineer Mark Anthony Abenda. One more time, palakpakan po natin si Engineer Leilani Corrales. Alright, at yung pong mga nagtatanong tungkol doon sa mga presentation, ipapadala po namin yan, yung mga slides nila. Pero kung hindi kayo nakikinig, alam ko na yung iba naka-on lang, di naman nakikinig. Ay, hindi po namin ipapadala sa inyo. Alright? That's clear. Okay, at yung kanina may nagtanong, hindi siya kumbensido na yung araw po ay malamig. Actually, yung nagpapainit po talaga sa atin ay yung mga tao. Diba? Marami pong di ba po yung devil, nakatira po siya sa hell, di ba, mainit. Eh dito sa Middle East, maraming mga demonyo, hindi nagpapasahod. Ganyan din po sa Pilipinas, kaya mainit ngayon, maraming mga demonyo. Kasi bawal lumabas nagpupumilit lumabas. Alright? So sana nabigyan ko kayo ng maliwanag na pagpapaliwanag. Moving on. For our right. To proceed with, we will have our last topic for today to be presented by the PICE Kuwait or Kuya Wait, huwag Kuya. At ang magpapakilala sa ating resource speaker for today, ihanda nyo na ang buong batalyon dahil nandito na si President Ruel Batalon. Sir, pasok.
Good afternoon. Good evening. Good morning. Sa inyo po lahat kung saan man kayo ngayon. At salamat Sir Arnel sa isang batalyon. On behalf of PICE Kuwait chapter, we are extending our gratitude to be part of this remarkable and timely collaboration webinar. Maraming salamat and kudos to PICE Qatar chapter, especially to your BODs and organizing committee headed by President Mark. It is an honor to introduce our speaker, who has 23 years of structural design experience in both horizontal and vertical structural systems, including steel diagrid, concrete, pre-stressed concrete, steel structures, and pre-engineered structures. He graduated from De La Salle University in 1995. He was the lead structural designer of Capital Gate, a 35-story building around 160 meters in height based in Abu Dhabi, which was recognized by the Guinness Book of Records as the most leaning structure at 18 degrees. He is currently the Structural Engineer Director of AGI Architects. He is an approved regular member of Association of Structural Engineers of the Philippines, or ASEP, and he is scheduled to be inducted tomorrow, along with other approved members in Kuwait, UAE, Bahrain, and Philippines. He is currently the chairman of Committee on Constitutional Amendments and Oversight of PICE Kuwait chapter. With no so much further ado, let us all welcome Engineer Eugene Toralba.
Engineer Eugene.
Sorry, I was muted. I'm sorry. Yes, ulitin ko lang. So thank you very much again, Pres Ruel, for that for that introduction. And sabi nga niya, in behalf of PICE Kuwait, we would like to take this opportunity to thank PICE Qatar para bigyan kami ng opportunity to be part of this very timely first collaboration webinar with the PICE chapter, especially this time of the pandemic. And kudos din kay sa ating host ngayon, si Sir Arnel. Marami ako natutunan kanina tungkol sa mga iba-ibang country ng international chapter, kung saan galing yung mga pangalan nila. Okay, so let me start with my presentation. I'll share you my screen. So allow me to share my screen first. Let me open. Sorry. So to start with, my presentation will be, I think it's very familiar, especially yung last doon sa last chapter na nag-present, which is also very informative. Thank you, Ma'am Laila. Which because this project is in Abu Dhabi, and which, as mentioned, it's called Capital Gate Tower, and I'll be discussing to you the structural systems and the design challenges that I experienced personally when I handled this project way back in 2007. And as mentioned, in 2007, sorry. Okay, so the project is called the Capital Gate Tower. 1 minute. The project is called Capital Gate Tower, and it's situated in Abu Dhabi, in United Arab Emirates. In January of 2010, the project was recognized by the Guinness Book of Record, being the world's furthest leaning man-made tower at 18 degrees. It was 160 meters, basically 40 levels. And for now, you can, if you pass by the exhibition area, it will be distinguished by its dramatic diagonal steel and glass facade with striking organic form. The sculpture, there's a sculpture stainless steel splash, as we call it, that flows down from the cantilever pool at mid-height level, if you see this portion.
لا أقبل بأي شيء أقل. أنا لا أسأل لما، أنا أسأل لما لها. وهندسة كابيتال جيت حصلت على رقم قياسي عالمي واعتراف دولي.
Okay, that was a short video, and there's a lot of video available for this project in the YouTube actually. Okay, so let me first discuss to you the system in general. So the first system is what I call the vertical elliptical core, which is actually, this is, if you can see the organic form, this is the only vertical element of this structure. And then we have the external organic form on the other side, on the here, that actually this is basically defined, or this is what the architect intended to achieve, basically. So if you can see, there are two videos of the actual construction on how this is like how the organic shape was formed. And internally, there is a what we call the funneled shape atrium inside. This architecturally, what during the time there, they wanted to invite actually natural light from the top, so it will serve as providing natural light, as I said, to the restaurants that they will have here in this area in the mid height. By the way, this right now the project, half of the project, the lower half, the lower portion of the project until the half is the, as I know, is the ADNEC office in Abu Dhabi, and the upper half is now called Capital Gate Hyatt Hotel. So the main lobby, or the food area, the reception area, will be found on this one. That's why this is one of the feature of this tower. Okay, because due to that leaning or organic shape, actually there is an eccentricity of the mass of the building from the vertical element, which is around 25 meters. 25 meters. And if you imagine, anyone or anybody, even non-structural, will think that this is like the huge challenge that we will encounter in this building. So it means a huge overturning moment. And in the mid height of the building, there is what we call the cantilever infinity pool, which is in this photo, is on this side. on this side. And from there, the what we call the splash, which is this aluminum stainless organic shaped screen, is actually hanging from that cantilever full down until it merged to the existing exhibition hall grandstand, actually, which is the main one of the historical place in Abu Dhabi. So the idea there when we are discussing this one with the architect that time is that since the grandstand is a very old structure and very simple precast seating for the military exercises, and then beside it you will build this very modern and very modern building. So they wanted to have this splash from the tower goes over to the old exhibition area, so that it will create some harmony between them. So my discussion basically I'm going to discuss to you on how we manage to solve this building by introducing to you to the major structural system for the building, and this selection of structural system to resist both gravity and lateral loads. So the first one, as I said, is what we call in this from the I got it from the ETABS model that I used during the design. Is this red one is the elliptical core. In plan, you will see it like in this shape. So as I said, this is the only straight portion of this building. On the outer skin, we have the external steel diagram. Internally, where we have the internal atrium, we also use another internal steel diagram. The floor, of course, as normally it will be acting as a floor diaphragm. Sorry, the floor will act as a floor diaphragm. And then in the middle or in the heart of this one, there is one column actually that is not actually when I start reading some of the documents or some articles that a lot of people wrote about this building on how this is solved. Actually, this is their own study. This is the only one that was not discussed by anybody, or as far as I know, because but to tell you honestly, this was the last addition to this system that we introduced as a team, because we were not able to solve a lot of areas without this. Meaning that this addition contributes a lot to the structure, but it was never been. No one noticed it because it's inside the structure and it's not visible at all. So I call it the inclined column, which later on I'll be discussing all of them one by one. Okay, and the last one, of course, after all the system of the superstructure, is what we called our deep pile foundation. So this is how we support it on the ground. So to go through the process, once we identify the structural system, of course we will be having our initial structural analysis model. To tell you honestly, when I got this project, I was thinking on how and where to model this so that I can use to design the building. I started doing it in STAAD Pro, which is what we have in your screen. And well, so I managed to build the model, the 3D structural model, using STAAD Pro. And I came up with 28,000 nodes, 21,900 members, and 28,000 plates. And after building this model, actually, unfortunately, I was not able to run it for probably some reason of the capacity of the computer or something, but it was not being successful. So I did it again with using ETAB's structural analysis model, which you can see on the screen. I captured it, and I was able to complete it also. And finally we got like some sort of analysis. He came up with some sort of analysis that we can now start see on how the loadings and etc. will take place, so we can start with the design process. So as you can see on how in the video that I was fortunately I was able to get some sort of a copy because it was very long time ago. So but at least it's still running. And to tell you honestly, during the time I won when I ran this model, it was around 2007, 2008 in that year. It took me 8 hours to run one run for this for the structure. So everyone, like anybody, especially those working in structural, will realize that it took a lot of time to run. And since we do a lot of iterations in the structure, because in the beginning the system is assumed, the sizes are assumed and everything. So every time we change one member sizes, for example, we have to rerun them. And 8 hours means I will go from my, like when I reach the office, I have to click the run button and wait for the end of the day to see the result, whether it's passing or not. So kung mapapansin nyo, medyo paano ba nangyari yon? So very challenging. I need like three different separate computers or laptops with me, and to run each sabihin na nating cases para makita ko yung behavior ng structure, or kung makita ko kung lahat ay pumapasa or meron pang kailangang palitan, and then finally to run ulit para make sure that 100% wala nang bumabagsak sa mga kahit na isang element doon sa structure. So so I have to run like series of models on a different computer para lang makita at ma-finalize yung structure. Because after I have a full model which is like somehow say 80% okay with all aspect like drift, you know, and then stresses and halos lahat ng member is passing, and then I can share it with some of the team to help me design like the individual element, like some columns or some members of the diagram, etc. But until we have a system, then we will not be able to. It's difficult to share it with some, like with my junior engineers that time, because I mean, it's not yet fully working. So yung effort nila will be wasted in the end of the day. So this is what happened. So finally, the main design of this structure is I created and done using the ETAB software. Okay, I'll open my next slide. Medyo mabigat kasi yung slide because of the videos. Kaya hindi ko siya malagay sa isa. But just bear with me. I'll open my next slide. So I will discuss to you I'll be discussing to you the system now. Okay. So let's start. So basically, if you can see here, I have like natural systems that I have listed here. 7 comprises the structural solution of this video clear. There are some messages. Hello?
Nagbabuffer lang, sir. Medyo nagahang konti.
I think there's something wrong with my video.
Okay lang, sir. Medyo nagahang lang ng konti, pero nandyan naman.
Nandito pa. Okay.
Try nyo share in uli kaya.
Okay, i-share ko ulit yung... One minute. What's wrong?
Okay, sir. We can wait for Kuwait.
Let me share. I'm sharing again my screen. Is it? Can you see now my screen?
Yes, sir. Andyan na.
Okay, thank you. So let me proceed with my presentation. Okay, so now as I mentioned earlier, there are 7 major structural systems that comprises that was able to solve the problem that we have right now, which is this structure, organic structure, as we said. So the first system, I call it the backbone, or which is the elliptical core concrete shear wall of the building. So this is, as I mentioned earlier, this is the straight portion, or the only straight portion of the structure, which is elliptical in shape, as you can see here in plan. And I call it as the backbone. So I was relying on this to keep the structure upright, in an upright position. So I'll show you. This is the plan. Okay, these are the plans of the tower, where you see on the ground floor. If you notice, the elliptical core actually is on the left side of this floor plan. But you have to imagine that the core actually is the straight part. So as you go up, slightly nag-shift yung floor plan to the left. You see, in the 19th floor, makikita mo yung difference nung shear wall, yung elliptical shear wall, tapos yung floor plan is more on to the left na, until it reached the topmost, which is the 30 or the 35 in the architectural floor level, but actually it's like the 40th level, structural level. So you will see the elliptical core, which is the straight part, yun na yung nasa leftmost ng floor plan. So yun yung transition. So malinaw na nag-shift yung floor plan. Pag ang reference natin ay yung elliptical concrete shear wall. So elliptical concrete shear wall act as the system's backbone, keeping the structure upright due to its distinctive leaning and twisting effect. I said twisting because somehow, if you see this side, at the same time na nag-shift siya, nag-shift from this position towards to the left, sa top, nag-shift din yung mass ng structure. As you can see here, di ba? Ito yung elliptical core sa top, tapos makikita mo yung more or less, nandito yung mass ng structure. So compared to the one below na medyo maaring nandito yung mass very close to the yung center of mass nung structure, which is somehow in the very close to the core or in the middle. Okay? So at the same time nag-shift, at the same time nagto-twist pa siya. Okay. So the core construction actually utilize a lot of innovative techniques as well. So, and which is number one, which is also actually number one as far as I know in the world, that we use a pre-cumbering shear wall. So this is also a technique that we use to solve especially the drift issue of this building. We use a pre-cumbering wall, and we also implement a vertical pre-stressing on the concrete shear wall. As a lot of designers normally see pre-stressing or post-tensioning on a slab, on meaning on the horizontal element, because this is where it is effective. And since, for example, since in general column or shear wall or something is predominantly in compression, so if you add vertical pre-stressing, people will think that you're crazy because you are adding more problem to the, I mean, you are making the situation for the column or the core wall more critical by adding this vertical pre-stressing. But I will be discussing to you why and what is the benefit of this one later. But for this concrete shear wall, which I call again the backbone, we implemented two special structural technique or a solution. It's not new for other element like beam and slab, but new for for core wall, which is what we call the pre-cumbering and the vertical pre-stressing. Okay, so let me show you a video on what is it.
Tendons are threaded vertically through the concrete. Each tendon is 20 meters long and runs through 5 floors of the building, overlapping each other for maximum strength. When the tendons are stretched, the stress counteracts the pulling force created by the massive overhang, stopping the concrete from tearing apart. On site, the team are post-tensioning the core, but no one has ever attempted this vertically in a skyscraper. The long tendon is lifted to the top of the core. The team used the steel tendon's weight to force it through a duct already cast through the core. Once the tendon is in position, the team lock off both ends, ready to tension its individual strands. A pneumatic jack clamps around one.
Okay, so
Steel tendons are threaded vertically through the concrete. Steel tendons are threaded.
So in the actual photo, you will see that there is this tendons that is part of the vertical reinforcement of the core wall. So these are this shear wall post tensioning tendon, and then this is also an actual photo of the overview of the elliptical core wall in the when it reached the upper level. So this is the first system that we use, which is the backbone, which we call the backbone of the building, backbone of the structure, which is the elliptical concrete shear wall. The next system is the external shell, or what we call the external steel diagrid. So if you can see here again in the ETABS model, I show only the external diagrid together with the concrete for reference, the concrete elliptical concrete wall. In the actual photo during construction, this is how it looks like in one view. And so it was we use this system because let me advise everyone that when we joined the project, the client already approved the shape and everything for the building, meaning that it was really intended to be like a monument rather than like a normal structure where you can be more efficient, more cost savings, more easy to build. So considering the fact that the shape or the organic shape has been approved, and this is what the client wants for the country probably, because this for the country in the exhibition area. So we try to fit or to find a system that can shape similar to the architectural intent. And this is probably the only options that we can go with, so that we can satisfy the intent of the project. And so the only options that time is to choose whether it's a concrete diagrid or a steel diagrid. And eventually we selected the steel option for the internal diagrid. So it suits the architectural organic shape, And this system is also effective to support both gravity and lateral loads. And as we know, this external diagrid actually is behaving like membrane, and the framework of diagonally intersecting steel provides strength and stiffness to the building. So this is more stiffer because you have like a vertical truss. So this connections, the crisscrossing, and all the joints will provide you more stability on the system. And so the only problem that one of the problem that we encounter is designing the diagrid can be very complicated, which is true, and it cannot be done manually. And then you have to have a complex computer model, and a construction methodology and construction method also. The good thing in that, when we did this project, we were able to select a very good fabricator, which is Evers and I want to mention their name because they also did. The contribution is like I think without good partnership with them, it will be difficult. And to tell you honestly, we were able to build this structure 7 days per floor, even though all joints are there's no typical connections or floor plans or anything in this for this project, but we were able to do it. The contractor were able to do it basically. Okay, for steel diagrids structure, the publication process adds significantly to the cost. Again, we spent a lot of time in paper during design, and I think the fabricator also spend like twice or 3 or 4 times what we spend when they do the publication drawing. But the only thing is they have these fabricators have a good team, and they were able to. They have a large team and a good team from design, drafting, and of connections and publication. So they were able to produce this once, and once it reached the site, as I said, 1 week is enough for them to build a floor, to build the floor. So as let me show you a closer look of the node. Actually, the diagrid is the diagrid is useless without very effective nodes. One of the challenge, an additional challenge here, is the diagrid that was selected is a tubular. So it's like 40 by 70 tubular section, and it is easy if we are talking of a plain structure. But once it twists, once it start twisting or having an angle, because as you can see, because of the organic shape, so the connection, the cut of this, for example, one member will be different from the others. So, like for example, in this one is the beginning of the project where we have the base plate. This part is straight. We have a double height ground floor, so it's not a problem because it's a straight profile, like a more or less like a plane. So the member from the base plate from the ground until it reach the ground, the first floor, is actually straight, so no problem. But when you go to the next level and it start twisting a little bit or having an angle, then the cut, imagine the cut of each member will be different. And that's why because of there's so many variations, we ended up thinking of using this connection, a cruciform. Okay, a cruciform. So any shape or any angle, it can receive, or you can have a bearing. It can receive the member. So you just need to cut the member, and you already have a plate that can receive from any member from any angle, from any direction also. So it can receive that the profile actually. So that's why we ended up deciding on using this diagrid node. And to tell you, this is the actual rendering that we did and give to the contractor in the beginning as a design part, meaning we gave them like a part of the tender to instruct them to do this kind of connection for the project. But of course, we have to develop each and every one of this joint, which is, as I said, is nothing or no one is identical to each other. So this again is very important part of any diagrid system, the node. Okay. So this video clip which I saw is like will explain to us.
Down through its shell, which means the shell can be thin, creating more space.
Okay. So this video, like alam natin, parati natin itong kinakain in the morning. So yung itlog is like a very good analogy for the shell, and which is also the similar to the diagrid that we use. So the forces, kahit na sabihin natin hollow, practically hollow yung loob ng itlog. Pero pagka gusto mo siya i-compress, hindi mo siya ma-compress dahil yung shell niya is acting like a compression element, which is all similar to what we have in the diagrid or system. The only thing that is important also, because ito syempre yung itlog is a complete shape, so in diagrid natin is not. So you have to have some beams or some in the out of plane. You have to have some members so that to hold it into shape, to keep it into shape actually, to yun sa position niya sa out of plane. Kasi in plane, it will act like a membrane, which is very, very strong. Okay. Next is the internal diagrid, which is, I call it internal shell. So the internal diagrid, okay, just to give you an idea. So
this cavernous hole is good news for reducing weight and minimizes forces. But the atrium is a double-edged sword. The floors are critical in transferring loads from the diagrid to the core. A giant hole through 18 floors means these loads must find another pathway. The forces need to flow away. And the solution is pioneering. An internal web of steel mirroring the external. This funnel-shaped internal skeleton carries the forces of an 18-story building down to its tapered base and into the core. But the loads are extremely high for such a small area. To stop the atrium punching through the core wall, the concrete needs protection. The answer, 6
okay, so that's the definition of this core wall, internal diagrid or internal shell, or what we call the internal diagrid. So which is this one that matches the funnel that suits the architectural funneled shape internal atrium where we have here. So we uses the internal diagrid. At the bottom, as you can see here, it looks like it's hanging, because in reality, this is actually like we need a transfer floor here, transfer structure here to support this internal diagrid, because it started in the mid height of the building. So actually that's the fourth system, which is what we call the transfer structure. So if you can see in this model, which I extracted again, the diagrid stops here, and we introduces this steel transfer structure. To tell you, in the beginning we use a concrete transfer structure here. So instead of the steel element, so we're thinking of building a concrete which is more solid, more massive. So to avoid any I mean, it's better for deflection and all. And then this is still internal diagrid will sit on top of it. But we have an issue when the contractor proposes a jumping form. So if you can remember, ito nga yung backbone natin, which is the elliptical concrete shear wall, is actually typical. The outer face is typical from ground to up. So the contractor to speed the process of construction, they use the jumping form. So imagine if we have a concrete, like sticking concrete transfer beam here, so may interrupt niya yung jumping form. That's why in the last minute, we change the concrete transfer to a steel transfer structure. Okay? That's why it's originally a concrete structure. So the next system that I want to discuss to you is what we call a collector, or what I call a collector, which is the diaphragm. The diaphragm. So the challenge that we have here is this is a typical floor plan from ground floor to level 16. As you can see, the elliptical core, and we have the floor actually, which does not have any opening here. From level 18 to up, yung funnel shaped atrium actually magki-create siya ng huge void dito sa floor plan na ito. So sa upper level, meron kang another challenge when we talk about diaphragm, because diaphragm normally, for example, you have a lateral load that is coming from a lateral load. So normally the diaphragm will collect this lateral load and distribute it to the shear wall, which is our resisting element in this project. So what happened here is if we have this lateral load, and then yung lateral force mo hindi makakadiretso sa core wall because of this huge void. So what happened is nag-introduce kami ng another load path para mangyari para ma-solve itong issue na ito. According just what mentioned in the video, na itong introduction ng internal diagrid actually is like a double-bladed sword. Na in reality, it helps to reduce the weight of the building, meaning yung overturning natin medyo maliit ng konti, liliit. But another problem ang binibigay niya kasi nagkakaroon ng interruption yung diaphragm or yung transfer ng lateral load papunta sa main resisting element natin. So in reality, ito yung system. So you have in the floor plan, we have a steel beam with composite metal deck. This is the part of the diaphragm component. And then of course we have the ring beam that goes around the building. By the way, this red beam here indicates the intersection of our diagrid. So every time na merong red tsaka yon, nandun yung intersection din ng diagrid at the same time. So imagine that there is a node on each red this intersection. So tapos kinoconnect natin siya ng external ring beam. So this also happens in the upper level. So again, meron tayong external ring beam para sa labas. And we introduced since we have another diagrid for the internal, as mentioned earlier, we also have the internal ring beam dito. So this is an additional component, and as I said, to enable to help to make sure that the load will be distributed to the core, we introduce what we called an internal horizontal trusses on the floor level, which is within the perimeter of this nung internal diagrid. So yan yung naging isa sa solusyon kung paano namin na transfer yung lateral load papunta doon sa ating lateral resisting system na element, which is the shear wall, the elliptical concrete shear wall. So that's our diaphragm. In the actual photo, so you will see that we have the steel beam here. Of course, there will be after this one they will place the composite metal deck floor with shear studs and concrete. And then this one is the blue one, indicates that we have the external ring beam, and then from the inside we have the internal ring beam that all goes to the core. Okay, and finally makikita nyo dito, ito yung mga nandito sa perimeter, yung horizontal truss mga diagonals na inad namin para ma-stiffen at makatulong do sa load path nung lateral load papunta dito sa core. Okay. So that's our diaphragm. And then as I mentioned earlier, this important structural element is what we call the eliminator. I call it an eliminator, or this is the inclined steel column. And as mentioned earlier also, when I go through a lot of documents that written for this project by others, I did not notice that, I mean, no one discussed about this inclined column. But in reality, as I said, hindi namin merong mga area hindi namin ma-solve doon sa system, especially maraming diagrid member ang buwabagsak dahil until we decided to introduce this inclined steel column. So ito yung actually ito parang ano to parang nakatago siya na pero siya yung malaking contribution. Hindi mo siya nakikita pero malaki yung contribution niya doon sa system. Okay? So this is the diagram, again taken from the ETABS model. So this is the inclined column, and then until ito na around level 17 ng 18 something ang starting nito. So 14. So at level 14, kung makikita nyo, yung part na yan will be, no, because disoriented somewhere here. Okay, wait. So, yung sa roof, sa level 34, nandito yung diagram, yung steel na yan, yung inclined column, nandito yan sa plan. And then it goes back to the core, which is somewhere here. Okay? So, para supported siya, doon back to the core. Okay? So, assuming this straight. Okay? So yan yung diyan namin na ilagay yung internal yung inclined column, which is actually we work it out with the architect. Syempre, meron kang inclined element inside your building, so they have to find a way to incorporate it within the corridor of the hotels. Okay. So but again, because of that inclination, itong eccentricity na ito as described earlier is around of this where you have this like somehow the mass, the huge weight here is around 25 meters. So yun yung tinatawag nating parang mag-overturn. So nilagyan namin ng inclined column. So this is again another representation where we have where these are the floor plates as you go down to level 14, and this is the inclined column that we introduced. Okay, the tower's distinctive lean effect at 18 degrees causes the floor mass to have significant eccentricity, and in order to reduce its toppling effect, an inclined steel column was used to gradually shift the mass closer to the core wall. So yun yung isang nagawa niya, kasi imagine if we don't have any inclined column here in the beginning, we are relying on assuming, kung imagine niyo meron kang external diagrid dito, tapos meron kang core wall dito. So this floor plate in the top or in the second one is always supported on the outside and from the inside. So ito is parang malaking simple beam na lumalabas. So it's the transfer is like mostly bending. But when we introduce when we introduce the inclined column, so more or less yung transfer na yon na lumiliit yung mabilis na eliminate niya yung eccentricity ng mass. For example, sabi ko nga, kung yung mass mo nandito, tapos yung center ng elliptical core mo is nandito, so ito yung eccentricity kung wala ito. Pero kung nung nagkaroon siya, immediately magkakaroon ng shift yung mass na to, magta-transfer muna siya sa mas maliliit or ma-reduce drastically yung eccentricity nung floor, nung mass, dun sa compared to the distance to the core wall. So yun yung ginawa niya. And then lastly, for the system, for the 7th system, is the what we call the deep foundation. So as expected, the foundation is a deep pile foundation, which with on a 2-meter thick raft. Totally, we used 490 board piles, 287 of which is the 30-meter length or the main board pile, itong mahahaba under the tower, and which is 1 meter diameter. And the remaining, which is outside the tower, is the 20-meter length of 0.6 meter diameter board pipe. Okay? So basically, yun po yung system na ginamit para mabuo yung ma-solve yung problema nitong building. But aside from that, of course, maraming mga calculation na nangyari at ginawa namin para ma-assure na okay or yung checking nung system, which I'll open another slide so that I can explain to you those other yung calculations na mga ginawa para ma-verify yung system. Okay? So I'll share you again this slide. This is the last slide that I have. Okay. Okay. So first, of course, with the shape, hindi siya pasok sa requirements ng codal requirements for wind, right? And as we know, but of course, in the beginning, I designed the structure using the wind code requirements by wind and earthquake, and then eventually, after we identified the system, because it is required by the wind tunnel expert to give the steepness and all. So after Iran yung using the wind requirements ng code, so nag-run kami ng wind tunnel test from Higgis company. So they developed the scale model and subject it to the wind load. Of course, the result they provided us with the result, and then I again input it to the model to double check if the structure is still safe or all members still passing. Okay, after we receive the wind tunnel result, and then there's another consultant that we seek like sub-consultant for the design, which is actually a Gifford in where is it, in London or something. Ang main task naman namin sa kanya is to study the construction sequence analysis. As I mentioned to you earlier, yung backbone natin, which is the core, is gumamit tayo ng dalawang importanteng methodology. One is the pre-cumbering of the core, and the other one is introducing the post-tensioning of the core, which is very unusual. Okay, now I will tell you actually the recommendation came from them when in the beginning we only hired them to do the construction sequence analysis, so that maka-introduce tayo ng pre-cumbering. Kasi nga, if we don't do the pre-cumbering, the deflection, the drift on top of this tower is more than the required, we cannot solve the drift by increasing the member sizes. So kahit anong increase ang gawin namin, kahit anong introduce namin na horizontal or stiffeners para mabawasan yung drift, hindi siya nagwo-work. So one of the solution that we think of is to introduce a pre-camber on the core. That's why we hired this like a third-party specialist for this, yung company na ito. So as you can see from this is part of their report, and then this from, as they mentioned here, the ETABS model that we created, we gave it to them, and they made like a scenario how when you build it. Actually, it is part of the construction sequence analysis. So there are, of course, there are some different level of sequence or schedule that we agree also. By the way, we agree also with the contractor so that they will follow exactly the same. Like for example, unahin nilang i-build yung core, four floor ng core muna i-build nila, beginning, and then after, tsaka pala mag-uumpisa yung diagrid at yung floor plan. So mauuna lagi yung core, as you can see from here. So ito yung ginawa nila from the ETABS model that we provided as a consultant. We gave them this the ETABS model, and they generated the construction sequence analysis. This one is using ETABS model, and they added the PT, the post tensioning, on the core. And then when they run it to, sabi nga nila dito, they use the software called Diana to do the analysis. So that because this software apparently is marami siyang options when it comes to construction sequence, including the time, yung time ng pati yung pag-curing at yung amount of reinforcement ng nasa core, pwede nilang ma-integrate dito sa software na to. That's why they decided from the ETABS, but they just import from ETABS to Diana and run it using, they said, a supercomputer because of the time. Okay? So finally, ito yung nangyari. Ito yung isang final run. So makita nyo parang nag-lean siya sa left side. And then as you can see, I mark it here that itong side na to ng core is always in tension. So whether it's only gravity load because of the configuration, it's always in tension. So as shown in this sequence, day 70, day 95 hanggang time na 309 days. But this, as I said, is based after the construction sequence. So nakikita na parating under tension yung isang side, of course because of the configuration of the system, of the structure. So kung makikita nyo, itong part na ito is the one that is always in tension. And so they decided to introduce the post tensioning on this side only. So what is the post tensioning? The main purpose of the post tensioning in this case is, or the primary role of the vertical PT is in the shear wall is to prevent cracking, underloading during construction, and in the permanent condition. And of course, if we as a structure, if we don't have this, if we can eliminate the cracking, we can, ang una nating ang unang benefit na makukuha natin ay yung effect niya sa horizontal drift, which is our main concern because as I said, without this pre-camber and PT, we cannot solve the horizontal drift. Yung lagi na lang siyang more than the allowable. Yung drift ratio niya is more than the allowable by the code. Okay, so these are what they did in the sequence, as you can see. So day 118 days until 360 days. Makikita nyo yung core na yon nauuna kumpara dun sa diagrid until it reached in 1,000 days of construction. Which I said, this schedule is also first, we agree this with the contractor before namin ginawa yung sequencing nung load. Kasi nga, kailangan masunod dito, otherwise we have to repeat the construction sequence analysis kung hindi susundin ng contractor yung agreed sequence na yan. Okay? And so it's one video.
The first part of their plan is to build the core with a curve bending in the opposite direction to the building's lead. As the structure grows, its weight pulls the core straight. In total, it shifts 350 millimeters, and the effect is significant. The concrete that would have been stretched by the overhang's pull will now be compressed and strengthened.
Okay. So, ibig sabihin yan, ang ibig sabihin lang na, balikan ko lang itong video na to, we pre-camber the core And we expect that when it reach yung full load sa top, lalo na dahil nga sa laki ng eccentricity, we expect na kahit na naka-precamber siya, tutuwid yung core. Because of after you introduce all the loads. Remember na kino-construct natin itong elliptical core wall na naka-precamber, pero hindi pa kasi natin wala pa yung complete loadings. So hindi pa siya gagalaw until you reach na nandiyan na yung finishing, nandiyan na yung facade, nandiyan na yung which will happen after matagal pa siyang ma-achieve. So in the analysis we assumed we did the pre-camber on the premise on the assumptions na pag nabuo na yung na-complete mo na yung floor, at least most of the loads may matutuwid na babalik na siya sa straight portion. Kasi remember that ang isang worry namin nung ginagawa namin to is yung core, yung lift sa loob nitong elliptical core, kung ma-overcumber namin siya at hindi siya bumalik, hindi siya mag-work, which is another issues. That's why yun yung isa sa mga kinonsider namin on what to decide dun sa value ng pre-cumbering. Yun yung isa din sa mga consideration. And gusto ko ring i-share na sa dami ng mga ginawa ko na cantilevers, for example, malaking cantilevers na structure or building or beams, most of the time, yung pre-camber, hindi siya bumababa, hindi siya nagsisiro. Lagi na lang naka-pre-camber kahit na So, yun din yung isang winori namin dito, especially na ito ay vertical. So, hindi pa siya yung katulad ng beam na directly, pag load mo, pwede siya, pag nag-pre-camber ka, pag load mo, automatic sa ibabaw niya, pwede na siyang bumaba. Ito, hindi. Kasi parang may iba pang dimension kung paano niya hihilahin yung core wall para tumuwid. Pero fortunately, nagpa-function naman ngayon yung hotel. I will say na hindi talaga siya bumalik to zero. So, buti na lang hindi namin siya na-overcumber. So, kahit na medyo naka-pre-camber pa rin siya, nandun pa rin siya sa tolerance nung elevator. So, yun yung isang good thing na hindi namin siya in-over. So yun yung okay. So this is you can see this is now okay. So basically ito na po yung last part ng aking presentation for today for the structural system, and I hope na medyo nagkaroon kayo ng idea somehow kung paano sinolve itong tower na ito, itong project na ito, which is happens to be in the Guinness Book of Record para sa most leaning man-made tower at 18 degrees.
All right. That's it, Engineer Eugene.
Yes. So we can...
Thank you very much for your very detailed presentation. Napakahirap po ng ginawa nyo. Tanong ko lang po, hindi po ba kayo nakainom nung ginagawa nyo yan?
Parating nga ako lasing, nasa Dubai ako nun, sir. Wala nang focus na tayo dyan sa project na yan that time, and medyo kasi walang reference na diretso para i-design mo yung building. So yun yung isa sa mga challenge actually na encounter din. So,
yeah. Tinitingnan mo pa lang napakahirap na. Anyway, magkakaroon po tayo ng Q&A portion.
Yes.
As usual, standby lang po kayo. Again, please welcome our immediate past president, the lovely, the single, the first best president of the universe, Engineer Sheila Medel and Edgar Dominsil.
Thank you, PP Arnel. Once again, Sir Eugene, thank you for that wonderful and really interesting presentation. So at this time, we have 9 interesting questions in our Q&A chat box. I think considering the time, we can accommodate all of this. All right. The first question is from PICE North Samar, Engineer Raimundo Giray. On top building frequency check needed to ensure global stability of the structure against lateral forces, I believe you also looked into the footfall frequency of long cantilever-like slab at upper floor levels. How much footfall frequency you got in slab, say at 30th to 35th floors?
Yeah, okay. Yan po yung tanong. Thank you for that questions and ano ba yan? Parang good morning na ba sa kanila sa Samar? Medyo medyo late na. Actually, tama siya. So one of the things that we consider because una is it is a long span steel structures and we're using a very thin diaphragm, yung metal decking. So ang unang idea, ang una mong titingnan diyan is one of the things that you have to look at are two things. For lateral is yung sinasabi nating lateral frequency sa top. Like for example, if you go for Burj Khalifa sa 100 floors, hindi ka na at normal wind hindi ka na at ease. So mararamdaman mo yung movement ng building, parang you will feel dizzy. This is one for lateral. So and which we, as I said, we study it together with Higis, yung wind tunnel experts. So they can give us the load at normal conditions, so the everyday condition, not on the extreme. So normally because we dinidesign natin yung structure sa first extreme case, but in everyday na ginagamit natin yung building throughout the lifespan of the building, ayaw mo na ma-feel nila yung dizziness doon sa top. So this is you're correct that this is one factor that we check with the wind tunnel expert because they can give us the value of wind which called during not the maximum wind that is provided by the code only, but including this part which we study it with them. So yun yung isa. Pangalawa, yung sinasabi niya, you're 100% correct that I uses the footfall theory nung chinek namin yung floor vibration naman nung structure. So kanina is the lateral movement for lateral load like wind, especially wind. Tsaka to take note dito sa ating mga participants from the Philippines, ang mas critical dito sa Middle East is wind rather than earthquake because it's only zone 1 or zone 2A in UAE or in Abu Dhabi. So hindi siya masyadong critical. Ang mas critical is wind. So we check that one. And then second, yun namang sinasabi nating floor vibration. So we adopted the footfall. Ngayon, tinatanong niya sa akin yung frequency. I'm sorry, hindi ko natanda yung frequency na nakuha namin at that level. But what happened there normally is naghahanap ka ng normally gumawa kami ng criteria with the client kung anong klaseng frequency ang i-adapt mo para sa design kasi ang vibration is actually yung pakiramdam ng tao na gagamit doon. So yung criteria varies from usage and tao. For example, if you are in an open space building katulad ng meron tayo ngayon, tapos yung mga tao naglalakad siya or in a shopping mall na kung maglakad yung tao, yung footfall niyan mas critical yan sa movement. Pero whereas kasi ito hotel, so marami kang partitions, marami kang dampers. So we were able nung ginawa namin walang tao na maglalakad dire-diretso kasi maraming mga partitions and so on. But we do check that one. The only thing is using that footfall as you said, pero hindi ko na alam yung value nung frequency at the 30th floor. As of now, hindi ko natanda.
All right, thank you, sir. Another interesting question here from our past president, PIC Qatar engineer Ronald Nilo. As mentioned, the Leaning Tower of Abu Dhabi used the technique of pre-cumbering the backbone or core engineered to counteract the mass of structure on the leaning side with the addition of the upper floors. In your own personal experience with this project, did you notice any discrepancies between the calculated movements in the pre-camber analysis and the actual movements after the construction of the upper floors? Was the intent of the pre-camber analysis perfectly achieved?
Okay. Thank you for that, si ex-President Nilo. Is that the name? Yes, hi, sir. Nandiyan po. Tama po kayo, sir. Actually, in what we did in this project is, of course, yung unang pre-camber is an assumption, right? It's an assumption. Tapos assume din yung mga sequence, which is agreed. So what happened is, nag-provide kami ng pre-camber at every floor. Okay? But we aside from that, we stationed as a survey. Sinesurvey niya yung gitna ng core habang dinadagdagan mo siya. And we try to balance each one. Like, for example, sir, katulad ng sinabi mo, ang assumption natin, yung unang assumption dyan, 350 mm pre-camber on the top. 350 mm on the opposite side. Pero, hindi yan mangyayari one time. Floor by floor, gagawin yan as you introduce the load. So, ang ginawa namin is, meron ng assume value. So, habang nangyayari yung sequence, chine-check namin by survey kung ano yung lumalabas dun sa actual. And then we adjust the calculation pag lumalayo siya. Tapos mag-introduce kami ng another point, another value ng camber dun sa ano. But in reality also, sir, nung na-achieve na namin yung top, nabigay na namin, dumating na kami sa top, totoo na hindi siya bumalik 100%. Naka-pre-camber pa siya. Sabi ko nga kanina, good thing na hindi namin siya in-over pre-camber. Kung hindi gagana yung elevator sa loob. So, but good thing na hindi. So, parang ano siya, hindi ko lang matanda kung more than half naman bumalik siya. Pero hindi na-recover lahat, hindi naging zero. Hindi naging upright yung building. Hindi na yung core. Hindi siya naging upright. So, yun yung nangyari doon sa ano.
All right, thank you, sir. Happy si Sir Ron sa sagot.
Salamat.
Okay, another question from another structural engineer, PIC Riyadh, Engineer Brian Bachinilia. What kind of vibration dampers used to stabilize this building? Sorry, I lost it. Again, what kind of vibration dampers used to stabilize this building to absorb seismic loads or strong wind loads such as during sandstorms? Is this kind of leaning tower design still safe to construct in the Philippines considering the strong earthquake loads and also strong wind loads? If yes, what modifications to be considered?
Okay. So thank you for that question, Sir Brian, and good to hear from you again since a long time back. We were together in Kuwait actually before. So yung tanong niya is what are the dampers used? Actually, we did not introduce specifically separate dampers for this building. So kung ano man yung system na nandun na, like yung beam, yung diagrid, yung 7 system, yun lang yung nilagay namin to solve the lateral effect of wind and earthquake, whatever. Yung even dun sa, ang isa lang na gusto kong i-point out is when we did the analysis in a particular, like in 3 directions, nag-require kami sa facade ng 20 mm movement. So if you imagine, it's 3D. So kaya nagkaroon kami ng very extensive study dun sa gasket ng bawat glass, na kailangan yung gasket mag-a-allow siya ng movement ng 20 mm in all directions. So within the plane, out of plane, and so on. So yun, medyo challenging yon dun sa facade. Sa facade. So yun yung isang naging issue. Now, the next question is, kung sa Pilipinas, para sa akin, is medyo very, very challenging ito, considering that we are in seismic zone 4. And our wind load is, as you know, is right now is 350 something kilometer per hour doon, which is less than one half that what we have here in the Middle East. So if we will do this same project in the Philippines, ang sa akin dyan, malaking changes talaga gagawin mo. At palagay ko is, kasi ang core wall ko is 800 thick na eh. Hindi mo na ano yan. Pag kung sa Pilipinas mo gagawin to, I think I will recommend a much bigger or more shear wall element if it is possible. But I think it is very difficult at siguradong malaking babaguhin mo sa geometry or shape nito kung sa Pilipinas mo siya i-build because of the doubling the load na meron tayo.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next question from one of the BODs from PICE Qatar, Engineer Melissa Ortiguera. What was the most challenging part in the design of the tower? Is it the wind or the seismic?
Very good question again, Ma'am Melissa. It's maaaring ma-surprise yung lahat, but this is the gravity that is governing on this building, not the wind load, not the seismic. It's the gravity load. The shape itself, it's the geometrical problem actually. It's not the lateral load. It added, but it's not. That's why I'm telling that. Remember, I mentioned there that when we did the construction sequence analysis, we found out that half, like the one area or half of the core is always in tension. So even it is a gravity load only, it's always in tension yung part ng core na yon. So yun yung malaking effect dyan on this one.
All right, thank you, sir. Another question from PICE Qatar. Active talaga yung mga PICE Qatar, but don't worry. To all the participants who throw in their questions, i-run down natin lahat ng questions nyo since we still have time. Another past president from PICE Qatar, Engineer Gerald Managelod. During the designed service life of the tower, is the building was designed and safe for occupancy when at some point in time UAE will experience frequent high-intensity earthquakes?
In some point. All right. So thank you, sir. Sir Gerard. Nakita ko kayo sa screen. Actually, we designed a building based on the current regulations that we have. If you talk of seismic in the future, we designed this, I think, in the 2B, zone 2B as specified in the Dubai code. Dubai code. So we use the highest seismic code required by the municipality, and definitely I uses both the static and the dynamic procedure to see the effect of this one. Although honestly, I started when I started it, I did the enveloping of the forces para very safe, but actually masyadong mahal yung structure na lumalabas, kaya I did not use the enveloped forces. So rather I designed based on each load cases. I mean, yun sana yung isang safety factor na pwedeng gamitin ng isang structural engineer, especially sa mga structure na medyo maraming uncertainties. And also to tell you, sir, na if especially your question, I think it's relevant. Ang isang magandang tanong diyan at pinag-awayan namin na matagal, anong R value? Remember in Dubai kasi at in Kuwait, we're using UBC code. I don't know in Qatar if it is same UBC code that you're using. I think Saudi Arabia is the only one using ASCE for earthquake. So ano ang R value na gagamitin mo dahil itong system na ito wala sa lists doon sa UBC code at wala rin siya sa ASCE code. So yun yung isang factor kasi yun yung malaking factor para ma-gauge mo ng tama yung ano mo yung ano tawag diyan yung seismic load dahil yun sa depende sa system like sa atin pag special moment frame 8.5 pagka normal 4.5 so you are dividing the seismic load by half right away because of the identification of the system lang. So yun yung isang sabi ko, pero dinesign namin yung structure based on the current regulation. So yun yung yung ginawa namin. So,
All right, thank you, sir. Next question from a structural engineer again, PICE SG, Singapore chapter, Engineer Emil Mbedi. It was nice and presentation, Sir Eugene, he said. The question is about the deep pile foundation, as you mentioned. The foundation was seated on the raft foundation and the deep board pile. How's the piled ECC result? It seems that the board pile layout too close to one another and the sequencing at your raft foundation concreting. Mamabilis mo sir ang pagbasa or sakto lang?
hindi, okay lang.
And then here's the follow-up question. Is there any pile cap introduced here on the said foundation aside from the raft foundation? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you po, Sir Emil. And so, good thing na naka-join din ulit kayo as usual. Sir Emil, parating present, Sir Emil. The pile, yung pong pile is actually really closely spaced. I mean, yung minimum requirement ng code na 3D or 5D, yun na yung nagawa na, yun yung talagang spacing, and we really reached the maximum compression capacity of a lot of files doon sa system na yon. Out of the 490 files, under the tower is 280 something piles which 30-meter deep, and the geotechnical, I mean yung dulo ng pile is definitely on nakasakit siya sa rock. Okay, nakasakit siya sa rock, which was of course there is a geotechnical engineer with us that identified this one. The only thing ang isa is so yun yung yung isa sa tanong, nakasakit na yung dulo ng yung tip ng pile natin nakasakit doon sa bato sa ilalim. So to know the maximum bearing capacity, I did not rely on the skin friction. Parang safety factor, akin na lang yon. Another safety factor for me. But although nasa rock kasi tayo, so hindi mo magagamit yung skin friction, but although it's there, and I did not use the capacity. And walang ibang pile cap kaming ginamit kundi yung rough lang na 2 meter deep ang pinaka system. And isa na lang, normally kasi malaki yung eccentricity, so malaki yung overturning. So ang tanong doon, parating tinatanong at usually lagi yung papasok sa inyo, paano yung tension sa pile? Saan mapupunta yung tension? Kasi overturning, one supposed to be compression, the other side was supposed to be tension. So this is how yung yung overturning works. So what happened is like dahil nga sinabi ko yung shell effect nung diagrid is actually hindi naging nagkaroon ng mas magandang distribution yung forces. Hindi siya katulad ng cantilever na analysis natin tapos nagfi-fix tayo sa base, fixed base, tapos gumagano siya, napaka-stiff nung assumption. Pero pag ginawa mo yung nonlinear analysis, hindi siya ganun talaga. So ang ibig ko sabihin, meron pa rin tension, as I said, lalo na doon sa core wall. Pero once it goes, yung tension niya, hindi siya kasing simple ng load times lever arm. So hindi siya kumbaga parang na-minimize siya dahil dun sa, first is the nonlinear analysis, and second is the shape of the diagram. Tapos, nung pumunta siya sa pile, medyo nilaro namin yung group, di ba? Yung 30-meter pile under, yung 287 na pile under the tower is medyo minumove namin para ma-minimize or at least wala kaming tension sa pile. Na we rely on the raft to act like rigid element. So actually wala rin kaming tension pile dito sa project na ito. So walang pile cap, tapos wala rin kaming tension pile. Although talagang nasa minimum requirement yung spacing ng pile namin dito sa project.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, we still have 9 questions in our Q&A box, chat box, and we have 15 minutes more. And this question from Engineer Reynante Sumagpao, PICE Riyadh. He's throwing like 6 questions. Okay. First, how do you address the very high eccentricities of the plan? Sorry. How do you address the very high eccentricities of the plan and irregularities considering earthquakes? What is the concrete strength? How many lateral direction analysis you have to consider for earthquake or wind? Is it past the maximum code requirements like drift? How did you address the second order analysis due to eccentricities? How do you address the uplift of the foundation, long-term fatigue of the steel members, deflection and cantilever steel, vibration and dynamic analysis? Mahaba ba, sir?
Yun na po ba? Yun na po ba yung yung tanong ko
Kulang
sa
pa, sir.
Dante? Parang ano na yun, complete design design review. pero tama yung mga tanong niya, and appreciate that Sir Renante. So titingnan ko lang kung kung natandaan ko yung sequence nung tanong. Pero anyway, so sa lateral load definitely una is direction. So like wind load, yung una ko dinesign ko siya using codal for wind and earthquake. So when I did this one, code requirements. So the wind load is maybe every 10 degrees. So ibig sabihin 360 degrees, every 10 degrees meron akong wind load. Yun yung load case ko for wind. Same with earthquake. Medyo tricky kasi yung software you have to rotate the model. But we did different we did many direction of loads when it comes to lateral load. So ganun din yung ginawa namin do sa wind tunnel. So we tell them that you have to apply the wind load every 10 degrees for 360 degrees. So yun ang isa. So yun yung isa sa sagot dun sa ano niya. Tapos yung regarding fatigue, I think yun yung wind and earthquake. Regarding fatigue naman dun sa yung high fatigue nung so we limit first is we try to limit the stress ratio of the member so that we have allotment for possible fatigue or effect of this sa long term lalo na. So hindi ko sinagad yung mga member stress ratio so that we were able to have some extra capacity when it comes to especially construction tolerances and all of this, and including fatigue and long term. So yung kanina sinagot ko na rin yata yung tungkol sa deflection, yung lateral, yung sway and so on. So ang ulitin ko, when I did the analysis, even using the wind tunnel, yung drift ng building na yon using ETABS, and even I was not able to run. I ran it in SAP, but it's the same. Is not satisfying the code requirements for drift. Okay? In all honesty, nung natatandaan ko yan, ang drift sa using at service level at wind drift at the top is actually 1 meter or 1.2 meter ang drift niyan sa top, which is if you have 140, you're only L over 400 or L over 500 is only 400 mm. So that's why as we said, we employ this another company to do the pre-cumbering and the construction sequence analysis to solve the drift issue for this one. And fortunately, ando naman yung structure. So doon namin na-solve yung drift. Hindi na-solve yun doon sa normal analysis na ginawa namin sa ETABS and so on. And then, meron po ba?
Ano po? What is the concrete strength?
Concrete strength, I think the core is, if I'm not mistaken right now, 800 thick. Yung pinaka-elliptical core, mga K700. Ano ba yun sa ano ba sa UAE? So 70 cube niya, mga 56 megapascal ang cube strength in American. K700 dito sa Kuwait kasi ano eh. Medyo hybrid ang ano. So yun yung ginamit namin sa core. Sa core. Yep, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. You got covered all the questions. So,
Thank you.
so next question is from PIC EPSA, Engineer Rohel. Okay. Engineer Rohel Limhoko. After the ETABS analysis, what are the post-analysis checks to check whether the basic characteristics of the model matches with the expected behavior?
Okay. Good question po ulit. Actually, normally, halimbawa, if I'm designing a normal building, meron tayong mga tributary area analysis, meron tayong mga manual calculation dito at kung mga frame analysis, beam analysis, and so on. So unfortunately at saka surprisingly, actually, nung ginagawa ko yung conceptual stage niya, pag nagpapalit ako ng mga, kasi minsan yung diagram, binabago-bago ko rin yung angle, ginagawa ko masinsin. Yung iniisip ko na pupuntahan dapat ng forces, hindi nangyayari. Ibig sabihin, parang hindi siya katulad ng mga normal na building na pag naglagay ako ng column, madi-divide siya sa 2 or naglagay ako ng frame. Tapos kagaya nga nung nagkakaroon ng problema ng frame, hindi na gaano. So yung normal na procedure na tinitingnan yung ginagawa natin to counter check the model. The idea there is if you had a model, tapos meron ka na over, nagkamali ka ng mass and so on. So mali na yung analysis mo, tapos gagawa ka ng counter checking even sa analysis. So medyo mahirap dito at hindi ko magawa yung mga normally na ginagawa ko sa mga normal tower or building, mga diretso. So ang nangyari doon is first yung mass na makakalculate natin eh. So I check the mass and everything. But as mentioned earlier, meron yung third party aside from dun sa analysis no ginawa nung Gifford, which is the construction sequence, they uses another software which is Diana. And Diana, yung ETABS na nilagyan nila ng PT, Diana, tinignan, meron dong comparison ng result which is identical. And we also have another peer review in Canada na nag-conduct din siya ng sarili naman, gumawa sila ng sariling model. So basically doon nag-evolve yun. From my side is yung mga floor, yan, na-check mo. Yung mga beam, ma-check mo. Tapos gumawa rin ako pala ng STAAD model, pero isang floor lang. Isang floor by floor kasi hindi niya kaya yung buo eh. So pagdating doon sa mga floor vibrations and everything yon, tapos makikita ko yung reactions bawat isang floor, mako-compare ko somehow doon sa mga ganung tipo, medyo hindi rin natin magawa yung yung double checking. Pero overall mass and so on yon, check natin syempre. Mass.
Thank you, sir. From the Philippines, PIC Cebu chapter, Engineer Gabriel Calubio. Do you use OMRF, IMRF, SMRF beyond the code?
Yes. Yeah, good question. Yun nga, meron pa pala tayong meron pa tayong gising na nasa Pilipinas despite na late na. So, actually yung joint na okay, ang ganito yan eh. Dito kasi sa Middle East, wala tayo, hindi natin ang system na ginagamit normally dito is because we are not in high seismic zone. Normally ginagamit dito sa particular project na to is a bearing wall type. So I did not use yung special moment. Normally the detailing level is only like intermediate, from ordinary to intermediate level of detailing lang. But the good thing on this project, kasi nga napakahirap ng connection, as you can see, yung pinakita ko sa inyo yung node. Actually, it's a full penetration butt weld connection lahat ito. So, kung tutusin, kung yung diagram ng pag-uusapan, talagang magsasatisfy ito sa kahit sa special. Pero hindi siya papasok sa special frame, hindi siya papasok sa ordinary, hindi siya papasok sa intermediate. So the level ng detailing na ginawa sa analysis is we only rely on the for the horizontal, we only rely on the shear wall. So yung R natin is not very small. I think pag hindi 4.2, 4.5 ginamit namin na R dyan, R value para sa seismic, sa redundancy. And then the connections, ay more than ano yan, more than yung correction ng node is more than the special moment pa yan. Dahil full butt penetration weld ang ginamit dito. Yan po, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Another question from PICE Oman, Engineer Julito Abiso. What is the connections applied between the transfer structure, open and close parentheses, steel that supports the internal dia ring, okay, to the elliptical concrete core wall? Is it bolted to the core wall?
Okay. Actually, again, another good question. Actually, this is one of the biggest challenge na hindi ko rin na-discuss in parati ko na kasing na ano to. So ang ano doon, nagkaroon kayo ng, ang ginawa namin diyan dahil jumping form, di ba? Jumping form yung ginamit. So nag-embed na kami diyan ng mga ano, ng mga plate with shear studs. Okay? So pagkatanggal mo yung form, i-fully weld mo na lang yung steel. Yung steel doon sa embedded plate na with shear studs. But just to as a side note, yung di ba kalahating from 18 to 40 yung ano kalahati ng floor. Ang laki din ng tension doon sa horizontal member nung transfer yung diagonal kasi brace yun brace. So meron ka horizontal, meron ka ring diagonal. So malaki na yung compression mo, malaki rin pa yung tension mo dito. So, yung connection na yon is done by introducing a plate. So, pero yung tension sa top, hindi rin kinakaya ng concrete. So, what happened is, I introduced some post-tensioning dun sa loob ng na horizontal naman to balance the tension that na ibibigay nung So, yun yung dalawang connection dun sa transfer na yon. Yun sa transfer.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Konting questions na lang. Sir, sabihan mo ko pag medyo blurry yung question, ang pag-throw ko ng question sa iyo. Hindi ako masyadong technical kaya let me know. Okay, from PICE UAE, Engineer Michael Liban. How was the temperature loading considered in the diagrid frame system? Was this addressed by the steel contractor during the design process? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Actually sa vertical, yan nga yung maraming tanong okay, number one, yung analysis na ginawa namin, nag-introduce of course ako ng temperature load. I think plus minus 30 or 40 sa that time. Dito sa Kuwait kasi 40 degree ang temperature loading. In-address, nilagay na dalawa yan. Doon sa main diagram, dahil continuous yung system, walang walang joint, walang expansion about temperature. But it was considered in the design. But mind lang na meron din tayong another diagram outside the main diagram. Yun yung nagpo-form nung mga glasses. Yung facade niya is made up of another diagram na nakakabit doon sa main diagram na ginawa ko. So doon sila merong mga provision for expansion doon sana. Pero yung main diagram wala. Pero ang load ng temperature was included as part of the primary load cases.
Okay, thank you, sir. There are still 4 more questions. Okay, from I used to be a PICE member, Engineer Lloyd Poral. Are there any considerations made in the checking of fatigue regularly on the structural steel connections?
Regularly. Wala sa ko, pero I'm not aware of regular checking of fatigue. But during execution and after that, meron din kami lahat ng testing, sonic, yung visual, sonic testing, and everything. Do sa mga welding points, and not just welding points, pati sa mga bolt, yung torque factor is ginawa namin through a third party that sila rin yung nagse-certify nung integrity nung connection. Pero doon sa tanong niya, directly dun sa patig hindi ako masyadong aware dun sa question na yan.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, 3 last questions from PICE Riyadh and PICE Qatar. Okay, here's the next question from Engineer Angelo, PICE Qatar. How was the consideration for the thermal expansion of steel elements in steel grid structure?
Steel bridge. Okay. Hindi,
Grid.
pero steel bridge. Okay. Ano yung steel bridge daw. Pero
No,
doon
steel
sa
grid.
Sorry,
diagrid.
Grid.
Okay. Diagrid. Steel diagrid siguro. So sabi ko nga kanina, walang provision, walang special detail for temperature doon sa system. Lahat siya is like fully welded, full penetration butt weld. Pero doon sa analysis, in-incorporate na namin yung temperature as a load.
Okay, sir. Last 2 questions. PICE Riyadh, Engineer Brian again. Due to post-tensioning of the vertical core wall, what is the concrete strength considered to resist cyclic loadings due to reversal of loading from compression to tension?
Concrete strength we use. Actually, paano ko ba sagutin yan? Ganito. Yung post-tensioning actually is, as I said earlier, was only designed to avoid cracking effect ng concrete since under tension yung half na yon. So hindi siya ginamit to resist seismic or wind effect. Kasi nga first, gravity load is the governing load na nangyari dito sa building na to. Geometrical yung problem. So because of geometry, nagkakaroon ng cracking doon sa isang side ng core wall. We introduced the post-tensioning to avoid cracking, avoid lang yung cracking. So we have yun yung main function nung post-tensioning diyan sa project. Not for earthquake.
Okay, sir. Thank you. One last question from Engineer Brian again. For cleaning the external of the building due to leaning of the tower, how the BMU or the building maintenance units have been solved?
Yes, actually it's more an architectural question, pero I can answer that one kasi nag-provide kami ng mga hook. Di ba yung nagra-rappel, nasa BMU siya, magra-rappel siya, tapos meron siyang extension, tapos i-hook niya yung sarili niya dun sa So bawat dun sa mga diagrid points, meron kami mga hook para dun kumabit yung yung maglilinis ng Ganun ang ginawang solusyon ng architecture. Tama siya kasi yung 25 meters, actually hindi naman sa facade, hindi naman, pero malayo yung pagdating mo pag yung BMU mo sa roof, tapos nag-drop ka, syempre straight yon. Pagdating sa lower portion, hindi mo na abot yan. So kailangan mo ng extension ng BMU and then you have to hook yourself para makano ka. So yun yung ginawa na solution diyan sa as far as I remember. Yung upper portion, yung lower portion kasi meron silang tinatawag na matataas na cherry picker eh. Yun yung ginagamit naman nila from the lower part.
Okay, sir. Thank you. We have one last question and we have 4 minutes left. From Engineer Raimundo Giray again, PICE Northern Samar. Have you made any major changes in structural arrangement and or layout in the course of project implementation due to construction constraints or client new requirements?
Okay, thank you again from Samar. Actually, ang dalawa lang ang major, ang change na ginawa namin, as I said in the beginning, the shape and the configuration of the tower. To tell you honestly, yung project kasi na yan, parang nasa with the company na for 5 years at hindi tumatakbo. And then when I hire me, na medyo pressure na sila, na kailangan nila i-deliver yung project dun sa ano. So, 5 years ago, approve na yung shape niya. Wala na kami magawa. Tapos pagdating ko doon, ang isang major change na ni-request namin ay, una, yung incline column. Yung incline column na yon, kasi pupunta yon, mag-a-appear yon sa mga corridors or sa rooms and etc. So yun yung isang adjustment na ginawa ng architectural para doon. And second is nagkaroon kami ng mga konting adjustment doon sa core wall. Doon sa core wall. Dahil yung pinaka-shape niya, manipis, tapos pinapalaki namin siya. So lumalaki yung area para ma-solve yung yung mga stresses and so on, especially stresses. At mapa-minimize as much as possible yung drift. Kasi yun yung number 1 na problema dyan sa structure is the drift.
All right. Thank you, sir. So that will be the last question. To those na may question kay Sir Eugene, pwede bang i-email na lang namin, sir, sa'yo?
Yes,
If ever
Meron
na.
pang isa, pwedeng pagsagot na lang yung isa para di nakakaya. Ito,
Meron ba? Okay.
isa. Last na lang.
Okay, sir. Last na to, huling hirit sa tag-init ito. PICE, ano ba to?
Qatar
Qatar chapter? Engineer Jeffrey Amorosa. If you are worried about the pre-copper tolerance inside the lift shaft, why not introduce release on some of the tendons to compensate for the allowable tolerance?
Nagwo-worry ako nagwo-worry kami dun sa kasi ang laki ng camber value, pre-camber required para ma-solve yung drift. Ibig sabihin, pag masyadong malaki yung na-overdrift namin, na-overcamber namin siya, pag hindi siya bumalik, hindi magiging straight. Pero yung palagay ko, yung sinasabi mo kasi na i-release yung forces, una, yung tendon, yung jacking force na inintroduce namin to sa project is minimum just to avoid cracking. So hindi pa rin siya for design purposes. Honestly, kahit na release mo or bawasan mo ng tendon yan, hindi yan babalik ng malaki. So malaki talaga yung, kasi kung binalik namin yung core, I think around 350 mm. 350 namin siya recamber. So kahit kung ma-overcamber siya, kahit na bawasan mo yung post tensioning, hindi rin ganun kalaki ibabalik niya kasi nga hindi naman direct, hindi katulad ng beam na direct yung yung effect ng post tensioning. So hindi siya masosolve doon sa post tensioning na yung pre-camber issue.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sir Eugene. That's all. Naubos natin ang questions sa Q&A. Thank you. Back to you, Sir AP.
All right. Thank you very much, Engineer Sheila, our champion speaker. And of course, Engineer Edgar Dumingsil. Talagang alam ko sir, nahirapan kayo dyan talaga sa project na yan. Kasi dito sa picture nyo, batang-bata pa ang kuha nyo. Medyo nagkaedad na ata kayo ngayon.
Sir, sa 2007.
All right. Please stand by for the awarding of the certificate. And I will read. Philippine Institute of Civil Engineers, Qatar Chapter, International Charter I-03. In collaboration with international chapters, certificate of appreciation is hereby awarded to Engineer Eugene R. Toralba in grateful acknowledgement of the invaluable service as the resource speaker during the conduct of the first collaboration webinar with PICE international chapters held on 30th May 2021 with the theme Unity Amidst the Pandemic Through Technical Collaboration and International Partnership. Signed, Engineer Osfor Docera, Co-Chairman, Engineer Dave Sanchez, our Chapter Secretary, Engineer Arman Tolentino, ang ating head ng organizing team ng major event, our first Vice President, and of course, Engineer Rohel Banal, ang ating second Vice President, and of course, our President, Engineer Mark Anthony Abenda. Palakpakan po natin.
Thank you.
Last na tanong lang, sir. Paano ang sumulat ng libro na estimate sa Pilipinas, yung Toralba. Sikat yan ng mga Toralba sa Pilipinas.
Sa hindi medyo ano sir, alam ko maraming masikat diyan sa bandang Visayas pero from Laguna breakaway daw yung ano ko, yung grandfather ko. Sa mga sikat pa sila.
All right. Again, thank you very much, Engineer Eugene and Engineer Roel Batalon of the PIC Kuwait. Standby lang po kayo at magkakaroon tayo ng picture taking after. So ganito po, no, pag nakuha na ng picture, mag-out na uli yung mga nakuha ng picture. Okay, but before that, we will have our closing remarks. To conclude today's event, we will have the closing remarks to be delivered by none other than ang nag-iisang banal ng PICE Qatar, Engineer Roel Banal.
Thank you, sir.
Engineer Roel?
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that all of you have done well throughout the day. I'm delighted to be with you at this first collaboration webinar with PICE International Chapters. With a team unity amidst the pandemic through technical collaboration and international partnership. On behalf of PICE Qatar, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you who participated in this remarkable event. To our current chapter president, Engineer Marky, to the event organizer, headed by Engineer Arman, our host, Engineer Lars and Engineer Elvin, moderators, Engineer Jerry and Engineer Ed, facilitators, Engineer Anthony and Engineer Osford, and to the PRC monitor, Engineer Kabang. To the 2021 PICE Qatar Board of Directors, committee members, to the immediate past president, Engineer Sheila, and to all past president of PICE Qatar, thank you so much for your untiring support and valuable contribution to make it such a successful one. I would like to thank also the PICE National President, Engineer Dr. Erdsan Renesuero, for the support and inspirational message promoting unity and friendship. And to all international chapter presidents, thank you very much for your support and cooperation, for sending excellent participants to this webinar. To all resource speakers, my sincerest gratitude for donating your precious time to impart your valuable expertise and very informative presentations to us. My appreciation as well to all participants and attendees from different countries for taking time out of their busy schedule to attend the event. Hope you gain something and enjoy listening. Lastly, my deepest thanks are of course reserved to our energetic and talented MCs, Engineer Arnel and Engineer Micaela, for their priceless contribution and running a smooth event throughout the day. Once again, on behalf of PICE Qatar, wishing you and your family a Eid Mubarak and pleasant good afternoon, good evening, good morning to all, and keep safe, everyone. God bless PIC. Thank you very much, everyone, for your participation.
Maraming salamat, Engineer Roel. Palakpakan po natin ang ating mga sarili. And then we will have our picture taking. So technical team, please arrange the picture taking. Alright, habang ina-arrange po yung photo op, hindi ako sangayon sa sinabi ni Engineer Eugene kanina na yung karamihan kumakain ng itlog sa umaga. mostly mga lalaki ang kumakain ng itlog sa umaga. Pero yung mga babae, kung ibang oras, hapon o gabi, yun lang naman ay para sa akin na. Alright, picture taking.
Please open your camera for group 1.
For PRC record.
I'll review. Yan. Pati yung mga attendees ba kasama?
Yes, we have 98 now in the house. Okay. Smile. 1, 2, 3. One more.
Grabe, ang seryoso nyo. Picture lang, oh.
Seryoso nga. Smile lang kayo. Okay, group 2.
Happy birthday, Engineer Micaela.
Open your cam.
Wala akong video, press.
1, 2, 3, smile. Okay. So anong yung iba pwede na mag-exit
Okay. Okay.
para meron pang naiwan na 100 sa attendees, 102.
Okay,
Okay,
mag-exit na ako.
Bukas po abangan nyo mas magandang mga topic bukas at mayroon pong parapol ang day 2. At napakaganda at gwapo ng mga MC natin bukas. Alright?
Okay.
Thank you so much. Salamat sa lahat. Salamat ng speakers.
Thank you, thank you.
Tapos na ba?
Hindi pa. Yung second group, ongoing. Naka-alphabetical po tayo. So yung mga nasa last ngayon ang pinapasok natin.
Open your video.
Okay, napuno na. Okay, group 1. One, two, three, smile. Another group. Ready?
Press, hindi ako kasama dyan.
1, 2, 3, smile. Thank you. 3 frames pala. Another group. Last frame. Okay. Thank you so much. Meron
Press,
pang isang group yung mga hindi na isama.
press disable yung aking video.
Thank you.
Press Alvin.
Yes, sir.
Yung video ko ay naka-off. Hindi pwede. Yun, ngayon lang. Ngayon lang nabuksan.
Gawa ng alis, pa-picture ka sunod. Sige na.
Ulitin natin pati ko, Emil.
Hindi, okay lang ako. Kahit wala lang.
Meron pa. Yung mga naiwan pang 25 numbers.
Ayaw nyo kasi yung pabuksan eh.
Ganyan kayo ngayon.
Paano press i-automatic lahat? Pwede sila mag-on ng video. Isang group na lang, kunti na lang natira, 25.
25 na lang.
Oo. Exit na yung iba. Pwedeng i-allow naman lahat press yata yung lahat mag-on ng video. Okay. Meron pang 10. Sino pa dyan?
Video, i-remove natin. Yung walang video, baka wala na. Umalis na yan sa bahay. Naka-on lang yung natin, pang-remove natin yung walang video.
Tama niyo uli si Kaimil para masama sa picture.
Kahit hindi na ako. SBP.
Nagtampo na.
Talagang hinuli niyo ako Maghapon pa naman ako dito sa silya ko.
Bale sir, i-insert ko lahat ng mukha mo dun sa picture.
Okay, ito na. Last group na to. Okay, 1, 2, 3, smile. Ayun, mga gwapo at magaganda. Frame.
Send.
Okay, last frame. 1, 2, 3, smile. Ayos. Thank you for your cooperation.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much po.
Thank you also.
Maraming salamat po.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you po. See you tomorrow. Bye.
See you all tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Keep safe always.
Stop recording na ako, press.
Thank you.
Congrats.
God bless.
Congrats. Well done.
Congratulations, everyone.
That I'm wild and I'm free.
Pwede mag-send daw ba ng panibagong para bukas?
You now. There's
I think same link po yata yung tomorrow.
Same link ba?
Opo.
Same link, bukas same link.
Thank you po.
Ang galing. The best.
Thank you po. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow.
Ang galing, Sir Anthony.
Ako nakasama sa picture.
Sige, isa pa po, isa pa.
Bukas na lang, bukas, Ma'am Grace.
Sino yun?
Oo, kasi ang video nakasara dati, tapos nakita ko na ngayon, pag i-open pa pala.
Sino yan? Sino yan?
Si Ma'am Grace.
Si Ma'am Grace.
Oh!
Habol.
Pasok po.
Habol. Pwede pa naman.
Pwede pa naman. Marami pang natira.
Oh. Sige. Oh.
Update pa naman.
1-3 pala to.
Thank you.
Sino bang hindi naka-on yung camera? Marami pa eh. O sige, 1, 2, 3, smile. Si Ma'am Grace pala.
Okay.
Nice.
Okay na, Elb.
Yes, kitang-kita na. Ang dami, hindi ko malaman kung sa kanino.
Ma'am Grace, bukas ulit, same link. Okay, bye. Thank you po, bye. Bukas ulit. Okay, bye. Opo, bye.
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 Congrats.
Congratulations.
Congratulations po sa lahat.
Asiel Fahotagana, taga saan ka?
May pinsan ka, may pinsan.
Sir Elvin, ano mo yan? Kamag-anak mo?
Malamang kamag-anak, apelido ko eh.
Yung pinipiter ko yung anong yan, magkakasunod kayo eh.
Asiel. Kaso hindi nagpapakita.
Good luck, Elvin, tomorrow.
Ititrim down ko pa.
Yung certificate nito sa email nila?
I-email natin i-send dyan, Press Lars, i-ano natin, kunin nyo nandun sa mga
We've been through the wrong people. They were too rude, and that kept us so down, so sad. We thought everybody were bad. We were alone, just by our own. When I met you, I realized that we were wrong. You're all the good things that I know. We got no rush. I'm ready when you are. Just I know how scared you are, but I want what changes who you are. 'Cause I love everything you are. What can I say? You just changed my mind, girl. What can I say? You changed my mind, changed my mind.
Okay, bukas naman ulit.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much all. Thank you very much. Job well done.
Congratulations.
Congratulations sa ating lahat. Salamat po, salamat. See you all again tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Mag-leave na po ako. Bye-bye.